the sovereign of the desolate sands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 means. 7 days later, September 18th. In charge of the Martial Academy, the Admiral's study. On the top of the main hall wall, a 4-character plaque, Heavenly Secrets, hangs diagonally. The sandalwood on the table slowly climbs over the exquisite wooden lattice and lingers on the fingertips of the study owner. It's like a static vortex. Wang Mingke is the only son of Wang Chengxun, the director of the Boat and Ship Office, Jian Xian reported respectfully. The Boat and Ship Office is a special government office that manages commercial transportation and grain transport. There is no need to say much about commercial transportation, and grain transport specifically refers to the transportation of public grain. Liangzhou has a large population and Shengzhou has a large amount of grain, so the court established a grain transport system in Yale River to balance the supply and demand. This case was 7 years ago, accusing Wang Mingke of robbing and raping a fisherwoman, and the whereabouts of the victim are unknown. At that time, it was ruled that there was insufficient evidence and false accusation, but now it has been 7 years since it was turned over, and the witnesses and evidence have been found. Jian Xian was interrupted by the person behind the table. No need to say more. The speaker was a burly man, wearing a high bun tied with a bamboo hairpin, with a thick black beard under his chin and a deep gleam in his eyes. It was Su Ginian, the third-rank admiral of Liangzhou's military academy. Although I haven't been out for 2 months, my ears are still sharp and I know everything. Jin Ziming has been working in the boat office for almost 4 months. The governor's order was issued 3 times, but all were rejected. Now he wants to transfer Wang Chengxun to the new guard station in the north of Shengzhou. The official position is 2 levels higher, and the benefits will be reduced by 90%. Would you go if it were you? Jian Xian did not answer, but just smiled. Besides, Wang Chengxun is Liu Xiu's personal. Su Ginian also laughed. The Office of Boats and Ships has 1 director, 2 assistants, 1 director of the transport department, 3 officials, 6 historians, 1 inspector of the transport department, 2 transport historians, and 6 clerks, a total of 22 officials, 20 of whom jointly wrote a letter to the governor's office, which was forwarded to the capital along with Liu Xiu's memorial. Jin Ziming was naturally anxious. When people are anxious, they have to resort to tricks. He paused. Does the admiral mean that this trick is a bit inappropriate? Jian Xian tried to continue. Su Ginian shook his head. It's more than just a difficult word to reshape the world when a fierce dragon crosses the river, he said and snapped his fingers. The air shook and the condensed smoke dissipated. Jin Ziming was born in a poor family and rose all the way. Now he is the prince's teacher. How can he be an easy person to deal with? Su Ginian asked back. It's his ability to catch Zhu Entrashi's handle and use his orders to do things. Yes, Jian Xian nodded hurriedly. At noon today, the constables of the city guardhouse went there for the 2nd time. Seeing that his superior did not respond, he had to continue describing the situation. Last time, Wang Mingke ran away early. This time, he was indeed blocked in Bai's house, but the constables did not enter the door. Su Ginian laughed when he heard this. So the matter is not coming to our side. Wang Mingke is a bully and a bully. He is actually in a state of complete chaos. If the constables can't take him down, they can ask the Imperial Guards. Isn't that reasonable? He supported the table with his elbows, and Tan Yan followed him again, circling under his fingertips unyieldingly. Admiral, should we do this? Jian Xian pondered for a long time, but he couldn't figure out what his superior meant, so he asked for instructions. There is no problem in the regulations, and the tone of the censorate is also anxious. His voice became smaller and smaller. The matter of returning the embezzlement to the public is too big and offends too many people. The budget of our Hangwu Academy is allocated by Shenjing. There is no benefit in participating in this matter, and it will only cause trouble, Su Ginian replied. Then don't do it, Jian Xian breathed a sigh of relief. There are ways under the regulations. I just pick out some old stories and send all the teams out. No, it's too obvious, Su Ginian shook his head. Although this matter is small, the power behind it is huge. I can hide for a while, but I can't hide forever. Besides, if I'm so afraid of things, won't it make Liangzhou Martial Arts Academy a laughingstock? When Jin Ziming files a petition to the capital, I will inevitably be punished by the headmaster. What does the admiral mean? Jian Xian was completely at a loss. The matter must be done, Su Guinian said decisively. And it must be done once and for all, without dragging it out, and even more so without causing any unnecessary trouble. The key is to deal with the matter at hand. He leaned back in his chair and tapped the table with his knuckles. Jian Xian understood this time. The fifth team is not in Zijing. The third team was originally the most suitable, but Shi Yuanwei left early this month, and now Boy is the team leader. No, it's too weak, Su Guinian said negatively. Team 4's Yi Xinghao has no problem with his ability, Jian Xian said again. It's just that he is close to several high-ranking families in Zijing, and has a particularly good relationship with the Lin family. Su Guinian waved his hands repeatedly. Team 6, Jian Xian was a little embarrassed. Well, the captain married the concubine daughter of the Zhang family. Team 1 is okay, but Master Lu Yun and that side have always been at odds with each other. Su Guinian laughed when he heard it. It's the water and fire that I'm afraid of. Little Lu's temper has not been tempered yet. He is still holding on to the shell of the general who defends the country, and there will be trouble if he goes there. So, there's only Team 2. He exhaled and looked at his subordinates. I remember that they went back to capture a peak of Hunrin last time, but he ran away. That's true. Jian Xian forced a smile. The second team is less experienced, but the staff was not full at that time. Hong Fan, who arrived in April, is strong in combat and steady. Although he is young, he is as experienced as Shi Yuanwei. Su Guinian finally nodded. I know him, the Star Lord of the Sand World, the kid who stood up for our department at the Flower Festival this year. It's them. You arrange it. The second day, September 19th. Mingyu Tower. In the luxurious suite, Liu Xingxin sat at the top in a brand new white dress, with a beautiful singing girl leaning on his side. In recent months, it's been a long time since I met you, Mingke. Outside, he smiled at someone at the table and raised his glass casually. It's all because of the Jin guy who made trouble, Wang Mingke complained. A little trivial matter many years ago, he keeps nagging. He stood up and stretched out his hand, carefully clinking the glass. But it's worth the hardship of the past few months to have a word of concern from you, young master. Before the flattering smiles faded, there were 3 regular knocks on the door. Come in. The door was pushed open. Standing outside were 4 black-clad constables. The sound of stringed instruments slowed down a little. It's this bunch of blacks again, a contemptuous voice rang out during the banquet. The leader of the constables swallowed his saliva, took a step forward with courage, and tripped. It was a chopstick that pierced his feet at some point. There was a roar of laughter, mixed with insults. A good banquet was ruined by a few mice. However, the constable just nodded and dared not say more. Pulling out the silver chopsticks, the head constable wiped the sweat from his forehead and took out the official document from his waist. I am the head constable of the Zijing City Guard office, and I have been ordered to bring people to capture the king. He dared not straighten his waist and his voice trembled. But before he could finish his words, he was hit on the forehead by a teacup. The captain fell over several times, spilling a few drops of red or blood on the bright red carpet. If you want to arrest someone, let your city judge come over. How dare cats and dogs enter my door? Liu Xingxin shouted. His energy burst out, turning into 2 invisible arms, closing the door tightly. Chapter 252, Back Off. At the same time, Zhang Zixi Hall. Jian Xian sat at the table, Wu Hongling sat beside him. The second team had 4 people in bright armor and swords. This time, the criminal is involved in a murder case, Jian Xian said. This man is 28 years old and has 6 meridians. He is 5 feet 3 inches tall and looks like the picture. He pushed a thick paper over. The second team passed it to each other. The paper showed a man with a round face and drooping eyebrows, a mole on the left cheek, and a short crown on his head. Judging from his clothes and accessories, he has a good family background. The courtyard has locked the location of this man, and you are required to go out immediately to arrest him, Jian Xian continued. If it's done, each person will be awarded 60 points of military merit. When this was said, Wu Ruai and Bai Jiasi were surprised, and Hong Fan and Zhan Yuanzi were amazed. The previous case of Cao Shangfei involved 200 and dozens of armed servants, but only 40 military merits. This time, only one person with 6 meridians was worth 60 military merits, which was ridiculously high. General, you haven't told me where the criminal is, Wu Hongling asked. He is now on the 7th floor of Mingyu Tower, box in number 2, Jian Xian replied, taking the teacup and taking a big sip. Now even Wu Ruai felt strange instinctively. The criminal is hiding in Mingyu Tower, Bai Jiasi asked in confusion. Since he joined the Imperial Guard, he has seen many cases, but it is unprecedented that he dared to hang around in the most prosperous place after the crime. I understand, Zhang Yuanzi thought for a while and got the answer. The criminal was protected by Mingyu Tower. Hong Fan also nodded. Jian Xian saw this and quickly denied it. No, the case does not involve Mingyu Tower, it just happened to happen. Wu Hongling was a little impatient. What is the general talking about? Do you know the name of the criminal? She asked. This person's surname is Wang, and his name is Minke, Jian Xian replied dryly. Wang Minke, Hong Fan repeated it, but saw Wu Hongling's face change drastically. Could it be that Wang Yanni from this Haoji office? She spoke 3 times more heavily. Jian Xian did not reply, but just nodded. General Manager, this, Wu Hongling asked anxiously, her voice lowered again. But when the words came to her lips, she could not say them. She instinctively glanced at Hong Fan. General Manager, Hong Fan immediately took over the conversation. It sounds like this person is drinking and having fun in Mingyu Tower. May I ask if there are any accomplices at the table? He asked with a bow. Now it was the general manager's turn to consider his words. Accomplices, there should be no. Jian Xian knew the inside story very well, and naturally knew that Wang Minke had someone to protect him. However, it was not easy for him to casually say the key points and what the superiors were thinking. On the other side, Wu Hongling finally couldn't hold back. General Manager, have you asked other officials about this case? She hinted. Jian Xian's face immediately tensed up. Wu Xi, is there any bargaining for the arrest of the Imperial Guards? He asked. Wu Hongling was speechless for a moment, but she was still unconvinced. But Hong Fan saw something from Jian Xian's reaction. Since there is an order from above, how dare we disobey? The 4 of us will set off immediately, he stood up and said, while signaling to his teammates. The 3 of them stood up immediately, and their silk clothes fluttered. Hong Fan bowed to Wu Hongling and turned to leave. When he arrived at the door of Zizi Hall, Jian Xian suddenly called him again. Wait, let me say one more thing. He looked at Hong Fan, who turned around. There are some implications behind this matter, and it must be done cleanly and neatly. Jian Xian stood up with the table, his tone deeper. The last 4 words are the original words of the Admiral. Understood. Hong Fan felt relieved after hearing this, and led the team to stride away. A quarter of an hour later, downstairs of Mingyu Tower. The Hong Fan team dismounted, left their mounts on the street, and stepped onto the jade steps. In front of the gate, the waiter saw the iconic red cloud-patterned silk clothes and hurriedly came to ask. But the 4 people just ignored him and went straight into the building. Except for Wu Ruai, the other 3 had been to Mingyu Tower, and Bai Jiasi had been there more than once. Therefore, the architectural layout did not need to be told by others. From the west staircase, Hong Fan strode straight up to the 7th floor. When he reached the 3rd floor, a middle-aged steward followed him from behind with difficulty. My fellow officials, why are you so anxious? Can you let me know? He smiled and spoke carefully, rushed to the side of the crowd, and stretched out his hand to stop them. Then he was pushed away by Zhang Yuanzi with a sheathed long sword. Catch the man in the martial arts academy, don't ask. The shout was like an order. The steward dared not speak again. He went up to the 7th floor immediately, turning around the entrance at the staircase. The corridor was very long, with thick red carpet on the ground, which sank slightly when stepped on. The boxes were arranged on both sides. Hong Fan looked up and saw several runners standing at the end. One of them had a scar on his forehead. Seeing the 4 people in silk robes coming over, the runners in black felt as if they had been pardoned. At the end of the corridor was the private room number 2, type A. 3 feet away from the door. Everyone could hear the pleasant music and unbridled laughter coming from inside. Wu Ruai folded up his sleeves, and Zhang Yuanzi switched his sword to his left hand. The formation changed quietly as they marched. The runners stood against the wall without speaking, making way for the aisle. Bai Jiasi gave Hong Fan a look and rushed to the front in 2 steps. The old horizontal sword was pushed out an inch, making a half-clang sound. The door was not latched to begin with, so it opened with a push. The sound of stringed instruments and voices suddenly became louder. There was a whistling wind in between. Baijiasi narrowed his eyes slightly and saw clearly that what was flying over was a porcelain bowl. The horizontal sword was unsheathed. He chopped the porcelain bowl flat with both hands, smashing it to pieces, and then exhaled his true energy to throw the fragments back all at once. The key collided, and there was a bang. The fragments were blocked by the invisible key wall. The sound of stringed instruments stopped immediately. The private rooms of Mingayu Tower are very spacious. This room is divided into two sets, the outer set and the outer set facing the door. A large, thick and solid rosewood table was set in the middle, and around it sat a dozen people. Half of them were young masters of aristocratic families, and half were singing girls of the building. The momentum of Baijiasi / just now was so fierce that the singing girls were frightened. "How dare you!" a loud shout. Behind the table, a figure suddenly stood up. This person was quite tall and wore a brocade hat. It was Bai Taiping, who had met on the Cacao festival. Baijiasi stared coldly at this relative without giving in, and then glanced at Liu Xingxin in the middle, and moved aside with his sword, blocking the main door. Afterwards, Hong Fan's figure appeared. "Long time no see, Mr. Bai." He took a step inside and smiled at Bai Taiping. Bai Taiping, who was full of vigor just now, was like a goose with its neck strangled, and suddenly became paralyzed. There was a silence in the room. "Hong Fan," Bai Taiping said with difficulty, feeling the wound on his head that had healed began to itch again. "It's me," Hong Fan replied. Young Master Bai's face changed from pale to blue like a revolving lantern when he was stared at by him. Then, he suddenly lost his temper. "Everyone, I'm sorry." He bowed to his companions at the same table and glanced at the main entrance. The 4 imperial guards, the steward, and the palace runners who were watching the excitement, were already blocking the way. So Bai Taiping had to push open a window to the side and then jump down from the 7th floor. Everyone was stunned. The captain with a fresh wound on his forehead rubbed his eyes. He really couldn't imagine the identity of this handsome leading imperial guard, who could actually scare the young master of the Bai family, who was sitting in the second seat, to jump off the building at a glance. Chapter 253 Anyway. The wind came in through the window, blowing the curtains. "He is a trustworthy person," Hong Fan said with a smile. Behind him, the manager of Mingayu Tower bravely crouched and squeezed to the door, waving secretly inside. 8 singing girls and 4 musicians hurriedly left their seats and walked around Hong Fan to leave the room. The view in the suite suddenly became much emptier. Hong Fan stood with his hands behind his back, and his eyes swept across the room. He immediately identified the target, a man on the right side of the round table, who deliberately shrunk his head. He had a round face and a black mole, which was exactly the same as the portrait. "I believe everyone knows the whole story of today's incident, so let's not waste each other's time," Hong Fan said loudly. "Wang Mingke, come here yourself. You are talking nonsense." "Who are you?" the round-faced man asked back with all his strength, and directly answered his identity. "Seeing this dress, you still ask who I am?" Hong Fan sneered. "I am the Liangshao Tiki. You have committed a crime," he shouted loudly. As soon as the voice came out, it instantly suppressed the noise in most of the boxes on both sides of the corridor. The officials who were crowded outside were so excited that they couldn't help but clench their fists. "Catch him," Hong Fan signaled. Zhang Yuanzi stepped forward and prepared to take him. The wind suddenly sounded. Silver light flickered. It was a young man sitting beside the table who took advantage of Zhang Yuanzi passing by and shot a silver chopstick at his chest, but Xiangxin sensed it and dodged it. The long sword was immediately unsheathed. The newly sharpened blade was pressed diagonally against the side of the boy's neck. "You want to resist the law?" Zhang Yuanzi asked coldly. "A little red-clothed official, are you talking about the law with me?" The young man sneered. He held another silver chopstick in his right hand, used the brute force that penetrated a high level, and stood up fiercely against the sword. A line of scarlet appeared. A drop of blood was dotted on the sword. Zhang Yuanzi didn't want to kill anyone after all, so he was forced to hold back. "Did you just count as resisting the law? Why didn't you dare to do it?" The young man laughed when he saw this. "This young master really thought you were so bold." He looked directly at Zhang Yuanzi and pushed the sword away with his silver chopstick. "I am the son of Zai Jinglin. My name is..." Before he finished speaking, the floor shook. The young man's peripheral vision flashed, and he turned his head suddenly, and saw the leading Tiki approaching, turning his shoulder and pushing him with an elbow. The speed was too fast, and there was no time to dodge. He instinctively raised his palm to block it. Crack sound. The son of the Lin family felt stuffy in his chest, and just as he tried to stabilize his stance, he felt his center of gravity shift. It was Hong Fan who followed closely and kicked him into the air with a low sweep, so fast. The thought came to his mind. Hong Fan turned around and reached out his hand, grabbed the man's face with his right palm, and smashed it on the table. People hit wood, dishes shattered, metal vibrated, liquid splashed. Countless sounds burst out in a mixture. Then, the force passed through the table legs and passed into the floor, shaking the beams. Everyone's feet were unstable. The government officials, managers and others even had the illusion that Mingyu Tower would not be able to withstand the force. The soft force was dissipated layer by the wooden structure. Lin's head was dizzy for a moment, but he came back to his senses. At the first moment, he was filled with humiliation and anger. Then he felt confident that the other party would not dare to use force. He gritted his teeth and tried to get up, but he saw a hand grabbing the silver chopstick that had not fallen in midair and stabbed it down. Crack! The silver chopstick pierced into the pear wood tabletop next to Lin's left eye. The whole room was silent. Only the high-frequency vibration humming sound lingered. "You are young? Give me a chance. You should know what is good for you in the future." The young man heard the faint teaching. The arrogance of the son of the aristocratic family suddenly burned up like a flame. "You?" Just as the scolding was stuck in his throat, the pain in his left arm and palm came late. Lin looked down and saw that the palm of his hand was burned and eroded by the high temperature, and his forearm was swollen red and purple, obviously fractured. Fear was like a tide, blocking his throat. He dared not move again. At this time, there was another noise on the left side of the round table. Hong Fan blasted out with a fire cloud palm, intercepting another noble family member who stood up and tried to get a sword from the cabinet by the wall. The explosion spread. Everyone's face was hot. 7 or 8 meters away, the velvet curtain separating the suites was burning, which made the manager's heart bleed. "Ruai," Hong Fan called out. "Yes," Wu Ruai responded, sending out an icy wind and extinguishing the flames in the air. For a moment, even breathing could not be heard in the room. Hong Fan stood up and looked at Wang Mingke. Wang Mingke looked at the head of the table. Brother Yang Cheng is young and hot-tempered. He was impulsive just now. Liu Xingxin suppressed his displeasure and forced a smile. But is young Master Hong really going to do it? He has always looked down on the Tiki. But Hong Fan is different. After the flower appreciation meeting, the news and deeds of this Jinhei Xingjin had spread throughout the city. Under the age of 18, he created his own killing method and defeated by typing, who is in harmony with heaven and man, with one sword. 8 words, not a genius, but better than a genius. Min was set up by someone. The so-called murder happened many years ago, a mere fisherwoman. Why is it worth mentioning? Liu Xingxin explained. This situation has nothing to do with the young man. There is no need to force yourself to be the first to do it. Why don't we each take a step back? I'll let Yang Cheng apologize to you, and we will be friends from now on, he persuaded kindly. Lin Yongcheng, who was still lying on the table and dared not move, looked up in disbelief and was glared at. Hong Fan didn't expect Liu Xingxin to say this. The last time they met in front of Mingyu Tower, the other party didn't even bother to look at him. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Liu," Hong Fan smiled and pointed to his chest. "Wearing this outfit, you can't be majestic when nothing happens, and hide when something happens, right?" He looked at Liu Xingxin. The latter's black eyes were reflecting the cloud pattern of the silk clothes. "Young Master Hong is upright," Liu Xingxin praised, and his smile gradually cooled. "But Mingke is someone that my Liu family must protect." Hong Fan did not reply. The true essence of the sand world circulated. A fine friction sound came from the inner room. Everyone looked back and saw a stream of sand gushing out from under the 2 huge pots of green plants in the corner of the house. The potted plants fell over. The golden sand floated in the air and spread in 3 dimensions. Then it sparsely and slowly occupied the entire space until it hovered and enveloped everyone. It was like a golden rain frozen in time. The air was still clean. Every grain of sand was as stable as a line of soldiers. But everyone who was not in the sand felt suffocated. Liu Xingxin's breathing became heavy, blowing the suspended sand on the surface. "Do you know the consequences of going against my Liu family in Zijing?" he scolded in a deep voice. There was no response. Through the sand rain, Hong Fan strode towards Wang Mingke. "How dare you!" Liu Xingxin shouted, and stood up suddenly. "Ming Wang, raise your arms!" The true energy gushed out and condensed into two invisible arms 1 foot long. It was the unique skill of Liu's thousand arms Mingwen cannon. Hong Fan glanced at him, and without stopping, he clenched his fist. Millions of suspended sand and gravel gathered towards Liu Xingxin, blocking his facial features and dragging him to the ground. Wang Mingke was already stunned by fear. Lin Yongcheng also forgot the pain. They stared at the figure who couldn't breathe and struggled violently under the sand, their expressions frozen. Apart from Shen Tixin, this one is almost the most respected among the young generation in Zijing. On the other side, Hong Fan was also surprised. He didn't expect to win with one move, nor did he expect Liu Xingxin to have only the second or third meridian of Hunrun. Not to mention by typing, he is even far inferior to Zhang Wenbei. And this person obviously has no actual combat experience. In more than a year, this is the first time Hong Fan has seen a warrior who can shout out the name of the move when making a move. Today's content starts here. Wang Min is a serious Hunrun warrior. But since Liu Xingxin fell, he lost all his will to resist. Standing there in a daze, Hong Fan picked him up like a chicken and cut off his key channel. Then he threw him to Zhan Yuanzi. "It's over," Hong Fan said, turning back to the main door. Behind him, Liu Xingxin's struggle gradually weakened. Lin Yongcheng half supported his body, watching all this, swallowing his saliva. A trembling fear and an inexplicable excitement rose from the bottom of his heart at the same time. Brother Liu is dying. He opened his mouth to remind him, but in the end he stopped talking. But the sand finally dispersed. Liu Xingxin lay in the golden ground, breathing heavily, his eyes lost focus, as if the feeling of being closed and dying had not faded away. "Brother Shi, how are you?" Lin Yongcheng rushed forward and helped Liu Xingxin up before anyone else. "Do you want me to call someone over?" he whispered. Hong Fan suddenly stopped and looked back. After seeing this, Liu Xingxin and Lin Yongcheng both shuddered and turned away in fear. "How?" Hong Fan couldn't help laughing. He originally thought that Jinhe was very shallow and Zijing was very high. However, these people in front of him came from the major families in Zijing. They always mentioned their ancestors and checked their surnames when they made friends. They seemed to have practiced martial arts, used elixirs, and had great cultivation, but they didn't understand martial arts at all and were not worthy of being called martial artists. Thinking of this, Hong Fan's originally tense mind suddenly relaxed. He turned around, took out a silver ingot from his pocket and put it on the table. "You broke my arm, and you want to settle it with this little money?" Lin Yongcheng glanced at the ingot of 5 taels of silver and whispered. "You are not good at martial arts, but you are very dramatic." Hong Fan mocked him and ignored him. He turned his head and looked at the steward of Mingyu Tower, who was huddled outside the door and sweating profusely. "I see that your table and curtains are quite high-end. This silver is considered compensation." The steward showed a smile that was uglier than crying. A large table made of fine pearlwood was stabbed with a hole. The loss was more than 5 taels. But he thought so. How could he dare to say so? Hong Fan saw what he was thinking. "Today's matter is an official business. The loss can't be entirely my fault," he added. "If you and Mingyu Tower feel that it is not enough, please go to this Hangwu court to find our admiral," he said, walked out of the room and strode away. The manager beside him didn't know if he heard it clearly, but he hurriedly bowed and saluted. It was like sending off a god. 2 days later. September 21st, noon. Zijing's Hangwu court. The autumn wind was bleak, sweeping more and more fallen leaves in the courtyard. Wu Hongling sat in the yamen with a frown. Her thoughts were very confused, and the more she thought, the more confused she became. She couldn't even write the task report of the previous day. Her ears were full of speculations and rumors she had heard in the past 2 days. She sat there for another quarter of an hour. Wu Hongling sighed, put down her pen, got up and went out worriedly. She walked out of Zizi Hall and went to Chori Mansion. Tao Hong, who had changed into a thin jacket, led the guests to the study. On the table was freshly brewed apricot and pear tea. It can remove dryness and moisten the lungs. Behind the table was Hong Fan. He was wearing a scholar's suit with a square collar, and his eyebrows and eyes were as bright as before. When Wu Hongling met his subordinates, her messy mind calmed down a little. After drinking tea and exchanging a few pleasantries, she made sure that no one was around, and finally revealed her intention. If she touched Liu Xingxin, would there be any consequences? Hong Fan was not surprised at all. He knew that his own minister was careful and strong. If Wu Hongling had no worries about the Wang Mingke case, How could she raise her daughter to be so naive today? As far as I think, what happened a few days ago is not a big deal. Hong Fan did not keep her in suspense and said bluntly. Of course, the Zhejiang aristocratic families are intertwined, and some of them will react to some extent. For example, 2 arrogant nobles have come to my house to challenge me in the past 2 days, but generally speaking, nothing will happen. Wu Hongling's eyebrows relaxed a lot after hearing this judgment. Why? But she still asked. Because I think our superiors don't want to take sides, Hong Fan replied. As long as the admiral does not take the initiative to leave, the 2 parties below the field will not take the initiative to offend him. Take a step back. Even if the aristocratic families want to retaliate, they should go to the hand holding the knife, not the knife. If the governor of a state only vents his anger on us lower people, it is actually a sign of weakness. This shows that within the rule system, he has no other choice. Wu Hongling thought for a moment and nodded heavily, folding her hands. Hong Fan suddenly felt that he had nowhere to look, so he had to lower his head to pour tea. But what if the admiral is going to leave? Wu Hongling asked again. I heard people say that the admiral sent us to support the governor general. After all, our department is united. Lord Jin came here under the order of the emperor. It is natural for the State Department to help him. I guess this is the rumor spread by Jin Ziming, Hong Fan said with a smile. The issue of taxation rights is very complicated, and there must be many details of conflicting interests, but some things are very clear from the root. He sipped apricot tea. Let me talk about something far away first. Are there many rumors that the head of the Martial Arts Academy, or the headmaster, has many conflicts with the royal family? This should be groundless, right? Wu Hongling hesitated. I'm afraid not. Hong Fan lowered his voice. Can the emperor be replaced? Of course not. Wu Hongling was startled and instinctively looked at the window and the door. Yes, the emperor is a lifelong system. Fortunately, the current emperor is young, strong, wise and powerful. Hong Fan said the treasonous remarks in a relaxed tone. Then the question is, can the headmaster be replaced? Wu Hongling was stunned. She really hadn't thought about this question. Although the Shanxiang of the Martial Academy is a first-rank official, he is still a minister in the final analysis, Wu Hongling analyzed. But the Shanxiang is a martial saint. The official position can be changed, but how can the cultivation of a martial saint be changed? Without the Shanxiang, who can suppress the 9 states? She said, feeling a little uneasy. That's right, Hong Fan tapped the table. There is already an emperor in the world, and now there is a Shanxiang. Both are lifelong. He laughed. It doesn't seem right. Wu Hongling felt a little bit sad. There is something even more wrong. Hong Fan laughed. Is the current emperor's life longer than the Shanxiang's? Wu Hongling was stunned. Who can compare the life of a martial saint? Maybe they get along well with each other, Wu Hongling said with difficulty, licking her lips. It's difficult. Hong Fan shook his head. When you reach the extreme position, many ideas come to the same conclusion. It's not about whether something has happened, but whether it is possible to happen. I've talked about the distant things, now let's talk about the near things. He suddenly changed the subject. The governor has been in Zhejiang for 8 years. Has he had any conflicts with these noble families in the past? No, Wu Hongling said decisively. The Liu family and the Shen family treated him very courteously. He has always been a distinguished guest among distinguished guests. That's right. Xianji Hengdun is a master of the earth ranking. Hong Fan knocked on the table again. Liu Xingxin is spoiled and not good at martial arts, but even he knew to give me face 2 days ago. How could his father and uncle not understand this principle? No matter how cruel the gods are, he is still a human being, and there are also relatives and strangers. The governor is new. It is not easy for him to make the governor break off the friendship of many years with empty words. Even if the governor goes down and completes the matter of returning the embezzlement to the public, how much credit can he get? Hong Fan asked back. Wu Hongling chewed silently for a long time, and felt that her thoughts were much clearer. Chapter 254 Firearms. Raising her daughter alone and getting the position of Sai in Zhejiang Wu Academy, Wu Hongling always boasted that she had rich social experience. In the past, she could occasionally guess some of the thoughts of the general and her colleagues, and was complacent about it. But because of this, Hong Fan's thinking mode shocked her. He was obviously just trying to judge the reaction of several Zhejiang family sons after being humiliated. However, after a few words, the context was no longer just about Wang Ninkei's case, but also about the personal gains and losses of the Xianren admiral, and even the rise and fall of the emperor in Shenzhen and the martial Saint Shansang. Wu Hongling thought silently, and an inexplicable sense of dislocation emerged. "Sai, what's wrong?" Hong Fan asked with concern. "But do you think I'm wrong?" Wu Hongling shook her head. "I think about it, and the more I think about it, the more I think you're right, but before today, I never dared to look at the Admiral, the Shanxiang, or even the Emperor like you do." Hong Fan asked after hearing this. "What's the matter?" Wu Hongling's face turned red when he looked at her. "He is the celestial martial saint and the supreme ruler of the capital, but in your words, he is as vulgar as us." She chose her words carefully. Hong Fan laughed. "Not vulgar, but practical." He shook his head. "Self-cultivation, family management, governance of the country and peace in the world are all about doing things, and doing things is not only about ability, but also about sitting in the right position," Hong Fan explained patiently. Wu Hongling put her hands on her knees and listened carefully. In the study, the relationship between age and status seemed to be reversed for a moment. If we want to decide the route of a ship, how can we not be the captain? Name and tool are originally complementary to each other, so even if you are a transcendent person, once you enter the world to do things, you have to be vulgar, Hong Fan concluded. The voice faded, making the study quiet. Wu Hongling was thinking. At this time, she was sitting very close to Hong Fan, but she felt that the other person's heart was very high and far away. The sound of water pouring was heard. Hong Fan picked up the kettle and brewed another cup of apricot and pear tea. The wind blew through the window, and the skin was slightly cool. Wu Hongling came back to her senses and realized that she was sitting stiffly. She quickly adjusted her posture to look more casual. "See ye, these things just now are just talk, and they may not be reliable in the end," Hong Fan smiled. "Well, I will give you the simplest judgment, so that you can follow the map. Whether the Admiral wants to join the game depends on whether Wang Nikke will be handed over to the Ministry of Justice. This person has solid cultivation. According to the regulations, he can be locked up in my cell or transferred. If the person is handed over to Jin Ziming, what I just said is nonsense. On the contrary, if the Ministry is unwilling to hand him over and only lets the Ministry of Justice come to interrogate him, then my analysis just now is almost the same. Inside the red wall, we have settled the black and white, and everything Wang Nikke confessed is fair and just. Outside the red wall, whether it is a powerful dragon or a local snake, who can force the head of the martial arts academy?" Wu Hongling heard this and felt relieved. "Ruai complained to me before, saying that now the Ruai team has become the Hongfan team, and you have become the team leader," she said with a smile. "If you keep going like this, you will not only be the Ruai team leader, you will also become my dean." Hongfan was naturally not easy to respond to this. Wu Hongling also realized that she was being too indulgent. Her ears turned red, and she drank the tea in her cup and hurriedly said goodbye. A quarter of an hour later, she returned to the Zhangwu Academy and happened to see Jian Xian coming out of the Zizi Hall. "Is there something for the general?" Wu Hongling greeted. "Yes, the Admiral just came to give instructions," Jian Xian replied. "The people from the HSC came to ask for someone. I will go and reply to them now." Wu Hongling heard this and smiled brightly. But Jian Xian was confused. 3 days later. September 24th, afternoon. Charifu Martial Arts Field. Hongfan stood in the field, and 3 steps away was a hanging wooden board. The board was 1 inch thick, half a meter long and wide. He adjusted his breath slightly, then condensed the sand armor. He raised his right arm horizontally, clenched his fist, and cracked the armor to take in air. The flame force intervened, blurring his vision. With a bang, dozens of spherical sand aggregate warheads were ejected from the armor around his forearm, blasting the wooden board into pieces. "How does it feel?" Hong Fan dispersed the sand armor and turned to the sidelines to ask. "The power of the shotgun is still not as good as the single-headed bullet you just used," Zhang Yuanzi replied. He pointed to a thin steel plate that was twisted and concave at his feet. "But in the realm of strength, this is more than enough. Close distance, the cultivation of the pure realm, if you are not practicing the horizontal training method and not wearing heavy armor, even if you don't die, you will definitely not be able to stand up," Zhang Yuanzi said, and walked to the courtyard wall behind the wooden board. The wall was intact, and there was no trace of the impact. "How far can your sand bullet hit?" he turned around and asked. "The upper limit is between 20 and 30 meters, Hong Fan replied. "But beyond 10 meters, the hardness drops rapidly." He walked to the side of the field and picked up a charcoal pencil. There was a piece of paper on the table, on which was drawn a rough sketch of the desert armor. In the human figure, Fine lines outlined the structures of the air intake, pressure chamber, shotgun chamber, etc. at various parts. The new experimental data was recorded in full. This move has been practiced so far, and theoretically there is no problem, Hong Fan concluded. But people are not targets after all, and they can't just take a beating without fighting back. We have to try it in actual combat to be more confident. He looked at Zhan Yuanzi. The latter shook his head and laughed. I knew that you called me here for no good reason, Zhan Yuanzi said, walked to the rain eaves of the martial arts field, took off the full set of cotton armor and heavy armor, and put them on. After the armor was complete, he picked up a short axe. The two stood in the center of the martial arts field. Hong Fan summoned the sand armor. Here it comes. Zhan Yuanzi waved his right hand in a wrist flower, giving a warning, and then stepped forward to chop hard. The sand armor thickened, and he raised his arm to block. The axe blade bit into the gravel and was immediately locked. Hong Fan ducked and rushed forward, punching out with his right fist. Zhan Yuanzi's left arm was against his ribs, and the whole person was knocked back half a foot, releasing the punch. One attack and one defense, counted as one round. At this moment, Zhan Yuanzi suddenly felt a burning sensation between his ribs. He stared down and saw that Hong Fan's right arm was obviously swollen, and the air around him was distorted. It's coming. Zhan Yuanzi's heart was awed, and he turned his elbow to block and dodged sideways. A short thunder sounded at the same time. Dust flew up. Zhan Yuanzi's upper body shook, and he stepped back 2 steps. Looking down, he found that he was shot. The shotgun shell was shot from Hong Fan's chest. So you don't have to use your arms for this move, but can also be the chest, Zhan Yuanzi said in annoyance. It's really hard to defend against, not just the chest, Hong Fan smiled back, quite pleased. Any part of the body that is thick enough can be used, Zhan Yuanzi was surprised. Then I think the power of your move is no less than that of the instant step. How much strength did you use in that shot just now? He asked, touching his chest and easily tearing off 7 or 8 half-rotten armor pieces. 50%, Hong Fan estimated. With 100% strength, using a single-headed bullet, it should be able to penetrate the 100-forged heart mirror. Awesome, Zhan Yuanzi gave a thumbs up. It's just like hiding a cannon on your body. Hong Fan was stunned when he said this. Did you just say cannon? He asked immediately. Yes, Zhan Yuanzi nodded. Shengshao is known for its invincible defense of the city. It's said that it happened several years ago. Don't you know about cannons? Hong Fan did not reply immediately. He scattered the sand armor, walked a few steps, put his hands on his hips, and looked at the sunset behind the wall. The power of firearms, I know that too well. P.S. The operation officer will update the chapter on your behalf. Yesterday's 2,000 words have been added directly to chapter 253. If the automatic update fails, readers can long press chapter 253 in the catalog to manually re-download the chapter and you can see it. Sorry again for causing trouble to everyone. Chapter 255, Golden Sea. September 29th, autumn is deep. Every morning in Zhejiang is frosty. On the streets, mutton soup and dog meat are becoming more and more popular. In the afternoon, the sun rises to the center of the sky, warming people's bodies. In the square of the Kazojin, Wen's Hongwen finished drinking the lumps of porridge in his hand and wiped his mouth. Then, he looked at the pennant standing on the sidelines. The flags fluttered, showing the wind. Let's get started, Wen's Hongwen instructed the team of the second hospital. Zhu Jingfu and Jia Ziong nodded, and under the attention of hundreds of people, they pushed out the plane in the shed. The plane is called Jinhe, and the whole body is made of wood. The propeller is driven by human power to step on the chain gear. Like the pneumatic design, this is also Hong Fan's contribution. According to the standards of the human-powered aircraft in the previous life, the aspect ratio of Jinhe is not large enough, and theoretically it cannot fly stably. But the so-called human power has different standards in the two worlds. As a driver and power source, Wen's Hongwen, who has reached the peak, can output a stable power of 12 kilowatts, which is 4 times that of the top-track cyclists in his previous life. This is equivalent to 16 horsepower, which exceeds the displacement of a 150cc motorcycle. The plane landed on the cement road and stopped steadily. Xiaojin, Duke Zhuang is here too. Jia Ziong finished the last check and whispered to his master. Wen's Hongwen nodded and took a deep breath. The surroundings of the venue became quiet. The propeller began to rotate, driving the plane forward. The speed increased and the headwind became stronger. Wen's Hongwen forgot everything and just kicked his legs with all his strength. The runway was about to end, and after several bumps, the Jinhei finally took off. Cheers were chasing from behind, but Wen's Hongwen could not hear them. He didn't even dare to take a second look at the scenery below him, but just stabilized the rudder to grasp the wind direction as he had practiced countless times on the ground. About 2 minutes later, the Jinhei circled over the Kizojin and re-aimed at the runway. "It's coming down." Jin Hong clenched his fists and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Wen's Hongwen adjusted the flaps to reduce power and glided down. The wooden frame shook and finally landed steadily on the cement road. The Jinhei slowly stopped. The cheers of hundreds of people burst out and gathered into a vague buzz. People gathered from afar. But Wen's Hongwen did not leave his seat. He leaned back in his chair and looked up at the blue sky. In a trance, he seemed to have returned to Jinhei and returned to 2 years ago. At that time, he was like stagnant water, full of depression. How could he have thought of today? After a thought, Wen's Hongwen could not help but turn his eyes back and look for his benefactor who reborn him. Mr. Hong, the shout broke through the noise. Hong Fan did not know what it meant, and smiled and looked over. He saw Wen's Hongwen rolling and crawling off the driver's seat, staggering over, and hugging him with his hands stained with vegetable lubricant. "I did it, we did it." He wanted to laugh at first, and the corners of his mouth turned into sobs. Immediately, a few tears fell from his pair of big copper bell eyes. "Teacher, why are you crying?" Zhu Jingfu, who caught up, asked in surprise. In all these years, he had never seen his teacher cry. Wen's Hongwen quickly turned his head to hide his face. But Hong Fan just shook his head. "You should cry, you should cry. If you don't cry today, when will you cry?" He hugged Wen's Hongwen with his back hand. "From now on, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, as long as there are people in history, there will be the names of him, Wen's Hongwen, your Zhu Jingfu, and Jia Ziyang. From now on, you are the father of Dahua aircraft." Hong Fan laughed out loud. As soon as these words came out, thousands of noises were wiped out. In the hundreds of burning eyes, Zhu Jingfu seemed to have passed through his body and squatted on the ground. Wen's Hongwen even grabbed Hong Fan's clothes tightly and cried like a child. Half an hour later, the chief supervisor built a study. "I always think that you can succeed with the participation of the 2 projects of the second hospital," Zhuang Liren said. "I just didn't expect it to be successful this time. With the Jinhei, Wen Xiaojin will probably be able to move up to the next level soon." As he spoke, his eyes turned softer towards the young man sitting opposite him. Hong Fan had been in Zijing for only half a year, but he had already achieved many significant results. Zhuang Liren recalled and thought about it, and felt as if he had returned to 20 years ago, shedding his slightly old body, and felt the vitality and pure joy that came with it from the bottom of his heart. "I sent a microscope structure diagram you drew last time to Shenjing a few days ago, along with the drawings and the actual objects made," he continued. "But the reaction there was much colder than I expected. It seemed that this thing had already existed and was not very rare." Hong Fan nodded, not surprised. He understood the difference between Dahua and his previous life. Because of the amplification of the human body by martial arts, many people can make many exquisite things without knowing why, without the basic theory. These results are fragmentary after all. The geographical barriers and the slow synchronization of information have led to different technical levels in different places. Several rounds of tea talks. Hong Fan was looking for an opportunity to state his intentions, but Zhuang Liren pointed it out. "I guess you came to me to ask about Liu Xiu and Jin Ziming, and whether there is any follow-up to the Wang Nikkei case," the latter asked. Hong Fan smiled bitterly and nodded. "You can't hide it from Lord Zhuang. I think nothing will happen, but judgment is judgment, and it is not reliable enough after all," he sighed. The analysis of Wu Hongling was not empty talk. However, preparing for the worst in everything is a habit of Hong Fan in his 2 lives. "This matter has been exposed, so you can put your heart back in your stomach." Zhuang Liren put down the teacup and said it decisively. "The result of this matter has been determined. Wang Nikkei admitted to the murder. Wang Changxun surrendered privately and will accept the transfer soon. The Zhaoji office, as a nail of Liu Xiu, has been pulled out by Jin Ziming. Next, the battlefield of both sides will turn to the Fubo gang." He briefly described the whole situation. "In short, don't worry. As a Tiki, you must follow orders and act uprightly. No matter how they compete, this matter cannot implicate you." "Thank you, Lord Zhuang." Hong Fan heard the meaning and stood up and saluted solemnly. Zhuang Liren just waved his hand. What about Wang Mingke? Since he admitted to the murder, how will he be dealt with? After returning to his seat, Hong Fan couldn't help asking again. Of course, let him go gently, Zhuang Liren replied. Otherwise, why would Jin Ziming make Wang Changxun bow his head? The voice was neither salty nor bland, and the tone could not be heard. Hong Fan nodded silently. The answer should have been known without asking. All the questions that should be asked have been asked, and it should be time to say goodbye. But just as Hong Fan was about to stand up, he remembered something. Lord Zhuang, I heard that Cheng Xiao is already using artillery, he asked. Does our dynasty have any research on firearms? Of course there is in the Weaponry Bureau, but this dynasty prohibits private ownership of armored firearms, so the people must not have them. Zhuang Liren was quite surprised to hear this. Why are you suddenly interested in this? The martial arts killing method I developed is similar to the idea of firearms, Hong Fan replied. I think this path has great potential. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's earth-shaking. This was the first time Zhuang Liren heard him praise a certain technology so much. Chapter 256, Matchlock Gun. Come with me, Zhuang Liren stood up and said, leading Hong Fan out. After many twists and turns, the two stopped in front of a building with strict security. This is a warehouse made of cement, about several hundred square meters in size. In the courtyard on all four sides, there are more than a dozen water tanks that are more than half a person's height. This is the firearms sample warehouse of my department. Zhuang Liren signaled to the guard and opened the door to go in. There was no light in the warehouse. Fortunately, both of them were martial arts masters with outstanding eyesight and were not afraid of darkness. Hong Fan looked up and saw that in the center of the warehouse were sealed boxes stacked separately, and there were many sacks lying along the wall. The sacks contained charcoal, used to absorb moisture, Zhuang Liren explained casually while checking the paper tickets in stock. The thunder blasters commonly used by mountain bandits were passed down from the previous dynasty, while the white thunder god commonly used for mining now was the result of Sheng Xiao 30 or 40 years ago. The development of firearms has always been the most enthusiastic of Sheng Xiao and Han Xiao. The border defense pressure there is also the greatest. Sheng Xiao is facing an astonishing number of densely charged zergs, which requires large-scale killing methods, so they are used to using explosives, and they will also be equipped with small tiger squid cannons in field battles. Han Xiao is facing the sea tribes with scales and domesticated giant beasts, and they are particularly eager for high penetration weapons. Just for mortals, the fire gun is 10 times more powerful than the strong bow, and it can penetrate heavy armor at a distance of 100 meters, so it is particularly valued. As he spoke, he found a wooden box and opened it carefully. The box was full of black particles. What is this? Hong Fan asked. This is the gunpowder that drives firearms, Zhuang Liren replied. Mix saltpeter, sulfur, and carbon in proportion. When the ratio of saltpeter to carbon is high, it will detonate slowly, which is suitable for making firearms and is called shunaiao. When the ratio of sulfur is high, it will explode violently, which is suitable for mining rocks and is called ngaiao. As he spoke, he lifted the box and blew into it. Sure enough, a smell of saltpeter and sulfur wafted out. Hong Fan was stunned. Shouldn't gunpowder be powder? He was a little embarrassed. What you are talking about is the gunpowder powder of the early years of this dynasty, Zhuang Liren smiled. Gunpowder granulation is the achievement of this Hansao prefecture. It was rare for him to find something that Hong Fan didn't understand, and his enthusiasm suddenly increased. In the past, when loading the firearm with powdered black gunpowder, the chamber could not be filled completely, otherwise it would not fire. However, the gunpowder could not be loaded too loosely, otherwise the power would be greatly reduced. Secondly, during long-distance storage and transportation, the various components of powdered gunpowder would gradually separate and render the gunpowder useless. The most important thing is moisture-proofing. Zhanzhou is surrounded by the sea on 3 sides and is the most humid. The gunpowder powder will deliquesce the nitrate powder after a short time. But if we make powdered gunpowder into cakes and then break them into granules, these shortcomings will no longer exist. Not only that, the power of granular gunpowder of the same weight is 3 times that of powdered gunpowder. Hong Fan was awed by the words. When he heard Zhan Yuanzi mention artillery a few days ago, he was quite complacent and thought that he could open up a new path with just a casual word. After all, in the technology tree of chemical energy weapons, this life is incomparable to the previous life. However, After listening to Half a Cup of Tea, Hong Fan was forced to adjust his mentality. He was a time traveler. He had heard a lot about hot weapons. For example, mercury fulminate can be used as an explosive. For example, the names of a series of high-performance synthetic explosives: picric acid, trinitrophenol, TNT, trinitrotoluene, nitroglycerin, glyceryl trinitrate, RDX, for example, detonators and fuses. But now, thinking about it, there are many obstacles to putting these things into a system and putting them into practice. Hong Fan didn't know anything about the molecular formula and preparation method of the explosives mentioned above. What one person knows is limited. Even the time traveler is the same. Hong Fan thought about it, but he was firm in some of his originally vague ideas. On the side, Zhuang Liren took out a well-made musket, took ammunition and tools, and motioned him to follow. The two went out and came to the test site surrounded by thick rammed earth walls dozens of meters away. Hong Fan set up a heavy armor target. Zhuang Liren tried to load it. He first confirmed that the barrel was clean, and then took out a certain amount of powder packed in paper from the gunpowder box. Untie the paper bag, pour the gunpowder into the barrel, and compact it. Put the paper bag as a soft filler and the bullet into the barrel with moderate force until the gunpowder stops shaking. It is said that this gun originally used iron bullets, Zhuang Liren said while operating. But iron is hard, it is difficult to make the size uniform, and it is easy to cause accidents. After switching to lead bullets, the caliber of the subguns is consistent and the power is stronger. Hong Fan, can I borrow a light? He handed over the matchlock, lit it with the help of the flame flow, and then inserted it into the C-shaped chuck. Raise the gun to the shoulder and aim. Pull the trigger, turn the pivot, and push the chuck into the chamber. With a loud bang, fireworks suddenly appeared in front of the muzzle. 30 steps away, the iron armor was shot through. I remember this thing is used like this, Zhuang Liren muttered happily. Another shot. He picked up the barrel and carefully cleaned the dirt with a brush. After repeating the above procedures, he adjusted the burnt matchlock to the right size. Fireworks started again. The iron armor in the distance was directly beaten half to pieces. Really good. Zhuang Liren leaned on his gun and looked at Gu Zixian, smiling like a child, not a congenital master. Hong Fan also nodded uncontrollably. This was the first time he saw a real gun firing. It was still a typical matchlock gun. To be honest, it was much more complicated than he imagined, so much so that it took a full minute and a half to fire 2 bullets. However, from these tedious steps, he saw a new and tender power with infinite potential. The two went forward to look at the target. The deformed lead bullets were embedded in the ground. The iron armor was pierced on all sides. A 1/10 inch thick iron plate cannot be penetrated by a strong crossbow, but this gun treats it as nothing, Zhuang Liren praised. According to the actual measurement in Tanzhou, the power within 100 steps is comparable to the straight piercing of a spear in the Guantong realm. Hong Fan picked up the still warm lead bullet and rubbed it gently. If that's the case, why haven't muskets been promoted? Is it because of the cost? He couldn't help asking. No, this thing is actually cheaper than a bow and crossbow, Zhuang Liren denied. A horn bow with bowstring costs 3.5 cents each, and a large arrow costs 1 cent, a large crossbow costs 1 cent each, and a large crossbow arrow costs 3 cents, 0.3 cents, each. A matchlock gun, excluding the ready-made iron material, costs 8 cents each. Gunpowder costs 3 cents per pound. 3-cent heavy lead bullets cost 7 cents per 100. Zhuang Liren was obviously good at daily affairs, and he quoted the price casually. In the long run, it is cheaper to use a musket than a hornbow. Then why not use it? Hong Fan asked. Maybe because it is not good enough, Zhuang Liren thought for a while and said. P.S. The price of military equipment is excerpted from the historical materials of the cabinet of the Ming and Qing dynasties, which is the account of the Huguang Duci in July of the 4th year of Changzhen. Because the bird gun and the matchlock gun are different, there are slight additions and modifications. The author is not a military fan, so he can only find a lot of information about gunpowder, muskets, and artillery to read and learn temporarily. After all, it is an imaginary world. As I said before, just watch it for fun and don't delve into it too deeply. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257 from top to bottom. Firearms do have their advantages, Zhuang Liren said. They are powerful, the cost of mass production is lower, and ordinary people can use them after a few days of practice, but there are many problems. He handed the matchlock gun to Hong Fan and pointed to the still-burning matchlock in the clamp. Take Xianshao as an example. Whenever the Sea tribe lands, they will inevitably create continuous rainy weather, especially in key battles. There will be heavy rain every time, and firearms will be completely useless. The word create made Hong Fan's heart shudder. Even in the previous life, humans' ability to intervene in the weather was very limited. Xianshao is better, but it can only assist, Zhuang Liren continued. Have you seen a locust plague? He turned around and asked suddenly. No, but I have heard of it, Hong Fan replied. I saw it a few times when I was young, Zhuang Liren recalled. In the western border of Shangzhou, when the insects came to kill, it was like a plague of locusts, covering the sky and the earth, fearless and fearless, so it was called a tide, the thing in your hand that can only fire once in half a day. There is no point in leaving it there. Explosives and artillery are better, but the former are disposable, and the latter need to be cooled and cleaned after firing, and can only fire 6 or 7 rounds in half an hour, probably like drawing a sword to cut off the water, better than nothing. In the final analysis, whenever the insect tide reaches the city, it still has to be solved with heavy armor and iron swords, he sighed. Hong Fan nodded silently. At this moment, the matchlock in his hand is actually not backward. Complete mechanical aiming, granulated gunpowder, paper shell fixed loading, trigger firing. Compared with the bird guns of the Ming and Qing dynasties, it is already more sophisticated. However, even in the last world, from the 15th to the 18th century, cavalry was still the ruler of field battles. Although artillery shone brightly in the Napoleonic era, its role was more in destroying formations and morale. In the Battle of Valmy during the French Revolution, a total of 100,000 Prussians and Frenchmen fired 20,000 artillery shells at each other, resulting in more than 300 French casualties and 180 Prussian casualties. This was a European artillery piece from 1792. Facing an enemy whose morale would not collapse, the lethality of solid bullets was indeed limited. To be honest, firearms should be more useful in the northern border. Zhuang Liren calmed down and changed the subject. It's just that Xinbiwei has always been independent, so as long as the situation is not serious, the court will never support military equipment. You may not know that the cement we transport over there has to be paid in full by them, he smiled. I just talked about the external aspects. Internally, our human race has been established on martial arts since the ancestor dragon descended from the sky. Firearms are not valued. The most important thing is that they are not very useful for martial artists. Zhuang Liren took back the musket and stroked the straight barrel. This gun is made by a master craftsman. It's a masterpiece, but even so, it's not accurate at a distance of 20 meters. Whether you can hit the target at a distance of 30 meters depends more on the combination than on aiming. In addition, loading and firing the ammunition is too troublesome. For someone like you who practices fire-attributed skills, it's okay. If it were another warrior, would they have to carry a fire starter with them and light the match before fighting? Compared to martial arts, firearms have too many restrictions, and in the final analysis, they are not as good as warriors. Zhuang Liren made a natural conclusion. Hong Fan did not refute. He certainly knew the potential of hot weapons. But what Zhuang Liren said was still very likely to be right. The martial arts of this world can really turn decay into magic. Xianpeng Mountain Doughty broke a mountain with one palm. The martial Saint Bailey Shi created a desert. As for the source of all martial arts, Zulong was an alien. It should be noted that before he crossed over, the humans in another world were far from having the ability to travel between stars. As a second-generation human, Hong Fan was already a warrior. However, at this moment, many figures surged in his mind. Not a martial saint, not a celestial being. It was his mother Kir whose life was unknown and whose death was unknown. It was the soldier in Jinhei City who had no qualifications to practice martial arts but bled to death on the top of the city wall. It was the fisherwoman in the case of Wang Minke who had no name or surname and no one to explain to her. The way of martial arts is to ascend to heaven by oneself and be self-sufficient. This is the path of geniuses and dragonaires. So where is the path of mortals? As a star god, Hong Fan didn't have to think about this question. But after all, he had been immortal for his entire life, so he had to think about it. Hong Fan exhaled deeply. Mr. Zhuang, this gun is indeed not good in many ways, but at least it will definitely come in handy when facing snake people. Why don't I use it in Liangzhou? He looked up and asked. You can't say we don't use it, Zhuang Liren replied. Zhanzhou has been tinkering with firearms for a long time, but for all of Dahua, this is still a new thing. He noticed Hong Fan's emotional change and put away his smile. You are practical and understand the difficulty of doing things, not to mention technology, skilled workers, and raw materials. Just look at the state and below. How many craftsmen and how many businesses are involved in the manufacture of bows and arrows? That's secondary. The most important thing is that the defense pressure in Liangzhou is very small. Before the spring, the line from Tongguang to Hualai has been peaceful for many years, especially Jinhe. When Jingsha was still there, he could even turn around and sweep the Great Swamp. Since there is no danger in the big place, the Liangzhou camp has no motivation to innovate. Zhuang Liren spoke very carefully, so much so that he was not tired of it. How could it be so? Hong Fan felt that the confusion that had accumulated for a long time since this year suddenly surged. Isn't it a credit that the border cities can have fewer casualties? Who determines the credit? And who is it for? Zhuang Liren shook his head and asked back. The foundation of Dahua's establishment is above, not below. There must be an ancestor dragon in the world, and then there will be Dahua, there will be Dahua, and then there will be the people. Since the benefit is below, what is the credit? The words were solemn. Hong Fan was stunned. He finally realized his mistake. For more than a year, his understanding of society was based on the previous life, following the bottom-up logic. First the people, then the country, and then the king. However, Dahua really has gods. The reason is not complicated, and Hong Fan figured it out almost instantly. So many questions have answers. Why are there so few troops stationed in the border areas? Why does the Zhao court defend itself more than defend itself? Why do warriors never talk about expanding territory when martial arts are flourishing? Because how much territory the human race occupies may not be based on people's hearts or national strength. It just depends on the casual words of the gods. It's easy to understand and very logical. But Hong Fan instinctively rejected it, so much that he felt a little pain in his heart. The two walked back to the warehouse with guns. Zhuang Liren was in front, and Hong Fan was behind. Silence all the way. The gunpowder and lead bullets were locked back into wooden boxes. Finally, the matchlock gun. At this time, Hong Fan finally couldn't help but speak. Duke Zhuang, I want to make firearms, please help me, he said. His voice was particularly hoarse, like ash or sparks. Why is it so heavy? Zhuang Liren asked. This was the first time he heard Hong Fan say the word please. Xianxing has just started on the right track. Isn't it too sudden? No, I'm definitely not getting carried away, Hong Fan said solemnly as never before. I don't really know much about the specific manufacture of firearms, but I have been thinking about this direction for a long time. Take that matchlock gun as an example. I have some scattered ideas. Although they are not systematic, they can definitely be used as references. Then you tell me. Zhuang Liren smiled back and handed over the matchlock. Hong Fan took it and calmed down. For example, this matchlock, he said, pulling the trigger. It's troublesome to ignite. You have to keep adjusting the chuck, and it's afraid of water. Then can we replace the matchlock with flint and ignite it with the sparks of friction? Zhuang Liren became serious. For example, lead bullets are inaccurate, Hong Fan continued. Is it possible to make spiral rifling in the barrel to guide the lead bullet to spin and enhance the stability of the trajectory, just like a gyroscope? And loading, now it is loaded from the front, so it is troublesome. If an iron bolt is added to the rear end of the barrel and it is made into foldable style, would it be more convenient? He almost couldn't wait to get the words out of his stomach. When Zhuang Liren heard this, he realized that the other party was not just thinking about it on a whim, but really valued firearms. I understand. He was silent for a long time before replying. Hong Fan, your attainments and talents in studying things and understanding principles are much higher than mine, but for this matter, you asked me for the first time, but I have to help you. The words were smiling, but also helpless. The court has ordered that the people are prohibited from making firearms, so, you and the State's Department will form a 50-50 partnership and open a new business. Then I can find a way to transfer a few masters and craftsmen responsible for firearms manufacturing from Zhanzhou to set up a personal framework. Zhuang Liren made a promise. Hong Fan couldn't suppress his joy and bowed deeply. Don't be too happy yet, I have to say something ugly first. Zhuang Liren smiled bitterly. First, the State Department only provides technology but not money. You have to pay for the capital required for the operation of this business. Second, don't ask me for help in the sales of firearms, whether it is Liangzhou Camp, WSUO or City Defense Department. You have to find someone yourself, Hong Fan agreed without hesitation. This business has to start from scratch, so it doesn't take much initial capital. The 5,000 strings of cash left by Cheyenne Bank every month are more than enough. As for sales, Jinhei City Defense Department has Hong Chang, Shakao Wei has Hong Wei. Liangzhou Camp now also has Liao Zhenghao, who is a fourth-rank guerrilla general. As long as the overall performance of the musket is better than the bow and crossbow, the soldiers will naturally make a choice. And this is what Hong Fan is least worried about. Chapter 258, Enlightenment. October 15th, the 28th year of Zen. More than half a month has passed since Hong Fan saw the firearms in the Weaponry Bureau. He has opened up more than 90% of the fifth strange meridian in the Hunran realm, and will be able to break through soon. In addition to cultivation, Hong Fan spends most of his time on Kai Mingxing. This is the newly registered business of Hong Fan and Liangzhou Weaponry Bureau in early October. The site was chosen to be a newly purchased farm outside Zhejiang City. The first batch of personnel came from the Jinhei Hong family and some were hired from Zhejiang. As for the chief steward, Jin Hong was appointed. The first generation of hot air balloons has been successful. In order to convince this prospective young supervisor to devote himself to the field of firearms, Hong Fan spent 3 meals and 10 kilograms of the best fire jade. Zhuang Liren's site is also progressing smoothly. Before the new year, the first batch of technical backbones from Zhanzhou should be in place. In the first half of next year, Liangzhou's first matchlock gun may be produced. But that is just the beginning of a long road. First, we must master the technical process. Then build a complete system from raw material mining to product sales from scratch. As for whether the small batch of troops equipped with muskets can create results in the battle against the Snake People, according to Hong Fan's most optimistic prediction, it may be 5 years later. At that time, he will be 24 years old. If everything goes well, theoretically he will have the cultivation of the middle and high stages of the innate, and will soon be on the Xianjiao list. In short, Kaimingxing is a long-term project that costs money, takes time, and has slow results. Fortunately, Hong Fan is neither short of money nor time. 7 or 8 days have passed since the beginning of winter, and the lowest temperature in Zhejiang is approaching freezing point. Every morning, people who get up early can already breathe out white air, and the window frames and steps are covered with silver frost. Lunch is a whole sheep roasted by Aunt Liu in a clay oven for 2 hours. Hong Fan ate the whole hind leg of the sheep and went to the martial arts training ground to kill an hour or so. Then he walked out with Zhan Yuanzi. Today is the day when Zhejiang releases the 4 lists, so everyone agreed to have a small gathering. It was Weishi, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and there was still half an hour before the Shenxi when the list was released, but the flow of people on the road had already gathered to the west. The names of Chuli, Aosiji, Xiao Hanhei and others were all mentioned in the discussions along the way. The crossroads facing the river at the west end of Xianzhen Bridge is a rare open space in the streets of Zhejiang. Not only is there a lot of people, but the view is also good. The 6-story Hechuzungsing, located here, was chosen as the place to announce the results. Across the street, only a foot shorter, is a restaurant. The owner was originally a well-known master in the Liangzhou Jianghu. The building has the same name as the person, called Riding Whales. Hong and Zhan entered this building. They pushed through the crowd and squeezed through the door, and went up to the lobby on the 2nd floor. At the table by the window, Wu Ruai, Lu Yanqi and others had already taken their seats. Everyone was present, and 9 people sat at the 12-seat table. The waiter served tea. Hong Fan moistened his throat and looked out the window. The view was broad and high above. The Yao River was spread out at a glance, but there was no scene of thousands of sails working together in the first half of the year. Why is it so deserted? Hong Fan was very surprised. The Yao River has a large amount of water, and the lowest temperature in Zhejiang in winter is only -10 degrees Celsius, so it never freezes. It has been like this since Wang Changsong left at the beginning of the month, Master Lu Yun replied. For every 100 boats on the Yao River, at least 50 do not pay the transit tax. In the past, the boat and ship department covered it up in various ways, but now it has been stripped of its shell by Jin Ziming, The transit tax he mentioned is the customs duty. 30 yuan for every 1,000 coins between the 9 states, and it will be several times higher if it passes through the borders of Huaiyang State and other countries. That's quite courageous, Hong Fan praised him after hearing this. It can be said that the prosperity of Zhejiang is mostly maintained by the Yao River shipping. To achieve this step, the pressure from all parties can be imagined. Who said it's not? Master Lu Yun picked up a piece of sponge cake and chewed it. You may not know the job our team took 3 days ago. We took Neo Dequan, the leader of the Bihai Tang of the Fu Bo Gang, nicknamed Sinking River Iron, at the North City Pier. Hong Fan had heard of this man. He was the sworn brother mentioned by Decayan's Huangxiao Shangfei. What did he do? He asked. It is said that it was related to a murder case 2 years ago, Yuan Zusong replied. After the man was brought back to the prefecture, the criminal investigation department was eager to try him, but now 3 days and 3 nights have passed, and there is still nothing to be found. It is probably a waste of effort. His tone was slightly mocking. Jin Ziming has to be anxious. Lu Yunqi swallowed the sponge cake and replied. When has the prefecture governor's office not submitted an impeachment memorial to the capital? Just talking about our department, not only General Jian, but I heard that even the admiral and the assistant minister have some opinions. He couldn't help but lower his voice. The higher-ups have their own ideas, but at least we have more military honors for taking on more cases, Hong Fan replied, somewhat gloating. He had no good feelings towards gangsters and the like. Normally, that's the truth. Master Lu Yun followed Hong Fan's words. But the matter from Lord Jin's side involves many people, and the distinction between right and wrong is not so clear. It's inevitable that I feel like I'm doing something for a private person. He curled his lips as he spoke. Zhan Yuanzi agreed very much. No matter which side the matter comes from, there should always be a clear right and wrong in the end. In the case of Wang Mingke, we worked hard to arrest the suspect under the banner, and the criminal admitted his guilt, but in the end he was still released. He sneered. After all this, it's all in vain. After saying these 3 sentences, Zhan Yuanzi drank the tea in one gulp. Wu Ruai and Bai Jiasi nodded. Of course it's not in vain. Yan Yulin teased and took the initiative to pick up the pot to refill the tea. Without Wang Mingke, how could Lord Jin's order reach this Haoji office? That's true. Master Lu Yun said. But if we offend the Fubo gang for such a thing, I don't think it's worth it. There was a hint of caution in his words. Hong Fan was quite surprised. Master Lu Yun had many problems, conceited, reckless, and face-conscious. But he was not timid. You can't be scared of people with the surname Bai or Jiang, so why are you so serious about a gang? Hong Fan asked. Although Bai Taiping and Jiang Wenbei are not good sons, they at least follow the rules. Master Lu Yun rarely spoke well of the children of the noble families. The Fubo gang is different. I don't say whether I'm afraid of them, but no matter what involves them, it's always a little tricky, he said seriously. It seems that I don't know enough about these people, Hong Fan said, looking at Bai Jiasi. I only know that they are very good at collecting protection fees. The 4 members of the first team smiled at each other. Bullying the neighbors is just a small matter, Master Lu Yun continued. The boatmen, dock laborers, and gangs of all sizes in Zhejiang are all protected by the Fubo gang, but they are not just powerful. If you regard the grudges and hatreds of half of the Liangshao underworld as a network, the Fubo gang is the nut at the center. It is difficult not to go through them for hiring murders, intelligence transactions, black market smuggling. Hong Fan frowned. So that's why Aos Hickson was able to sit with Shen Tixin that day. He thought of the incident at Mingayu Tower. P.S. My stomach is better than yesterday, but I still feel nauseous in the afternoon. I will try to finish another chapter in the evening. Chapter 259, Tiger looking in the mirror. Well, that's not necessarily true, Master Lu Yun said. The young lady from the Shen family doesn't care about family background when making friends, so she may not think much of the Fubo gang. But I'll tell you one more thing and you'll understand. The restaurant was already noisy, but he lowered his voice further. As a Star Lord, the red-faced god is now a celebrity in Zhejiang City, but 4 or 5 years ago, although he had obtained the Life Star, he was only at the initial stage of the Guantong realm and was not valued by others, until he tried to climb the high branch of Aos Hickson, the biological son of the elder of the Golden Magnetic Sect, the young leader of the Red Hand Gang who was still alive at that time. Su Pifang challenged everyone who had a conflict with Aos Hickson, either killing them or injuring them. Then the 2 of them became friends. It's only been 3 years, and Su Pifeng has rushed all the way from Guangdong to Xianren. The name of the red-faced god is not only loud in Zijing, Master Lu Yun's voice was cold and pointed. This reminded everyone of the 4 words he mentioned before, hiring a killer to kill. That's a good idea, Hong Fan smiled, but he stopped talking before he finished. The world of sand was sensing something. He turned his head. Everyone followed his gaze and looked at the staircase opposite the lobby. A tall man came up slowly. It was like waves rising from the sea and mountains rising from the plains. What a coincidence, when we talk about the star god, he's here, Zhang Yuanzi chuckled. It was Su Pifeng who came up. He went up to the 2nd floor, moved sideways, and made way for the enchanting figure in a red dress behind him like a guard. It was Aos. Then, Su Pifeng's eyes also shot over. Hong Fan looked at him. The fate star was floating, and the sensing was stronger. Aos was about to go upstairs, but was stopped by his lover. The former stood up straight, and the latter bent his waist. The two whispered a few words. Then, Su Pifeng strode to the window. The voices in the lobby suddenly became 3 points lower. I am Su Pifeng. He stood in front of the table and bowed to everyone. This man was at least 2 meters and 1 meter tall, and he looked majestic just standing there. I saw Master Hong Fan's demeanor in Mingyu Tower last time, but I wonder if you still remember me, Su Pifeng said. His voice was warm and his expression was even more enthusiastic. Wu Ruai and Bai Jiasi naturally felt a liking for him. But when Hong Fan saw him, he was like a tiger looking in the mirror, terrified. Star gods kill people and take away their souls. What if star gods kill each other? Hong Fan couldn't help but think of the dried corpse wearing a golden crown on the purple Zhang velvet and under the dragon-patterned golden silk, and the 2 dragon soul fruits. He felt that the other party was thinking about the same thing. Brother Su is so majestic that it is naturally unforgettable, Hong Fan bowed and smiled. At this time, another light footsteps came over. Aos neither greeted nor bowed, but pulled out an empty chair with no neighbors on either side and sat down directly. Su Pifeng was a little embarrassed, but he didn't dare to say much to his lover. Excuse me, he asked. Please take a seat, Master Lu Yun replied generously before he finished. Su Pifeng sat down, his collar loosened a little, revealing a slender golden chain. The waiter waiting in the lobby hurried up to pour tea for the two. Aos crossed his arms and looked at the long river outside the building, but he didn't say a word. Su Pifeng was talkative. Among the 3 star gods in Zijing, apart from the old senior from the Liu family, there are only you and me. That time in Mingyu Tower, I saw that Master Hong seemed to be using martial arts, he asked casually. Brother Su is right, it is the family heirloom Yanliu Guang, Hong Fan replied. So Master Hong is practicing both the life star and martial arts, Su Pifeng showed a look of surprise. Hong Fan nodded. When Master Hong was practicing, he urged the upper and lower Danshan at the same time. Would there be a conflict? Su Pifeng asked again hurriedly. The true key and true essence are each doing their own thing, so there will be no conflict, Hong Fan told the truth. Although it's presumptuous, may I ask if there is a trick? It's not a trick. I heard that it requires a natural gift called tough meridians and a delicate mind. This is exactly the same as what I know. The topic circled around the fate star and turned to the Golden Sea. Snake people, war, casualties. Except for Aos, everyone had their own sorrow. Su Pifeng lowered his eyes, pursed his lips, and curled his fingers slightly. A compassionate sigh made Hong Fan feel a little bit out of place. The round table was silent for a moment. What broke the silence was Aos' sneer. She stretched out her jade arms and suddenly drank the tea in front of her. This tea is not good, Aos said coldly. Su Pifeng hurriedly stood up. Excuse me, everyone, he apologized, smiling helplessly. There are friends waiting for Xiaoyor upstairs. This Xiaoyor obviously refers to Aos. She has already left. But please do as you please, Hong Fan replied. We are in the A1 box on the 4th floor. If you are willing, you can come up and join us when the results are announced. The view is better than on the 2nd floor, Su Pifeng hurriedly said a few more polite words before chasing after him. The two disappeared upstairs. They come from gangs, but their style is more expensive than a lot of money, Yuan Zusong sneered. It was almost 3 p.m. The waiters came up like butterflies, serving wine and food to each table. Sure enough, half a quarter of an hour later, There was movement on the roof of the tall building across the street. A martial arts academy official leaned out from the roof and hung a wide yellow list on a short pole. Then, there was a flash of the knife. The yellow list rolled down and straightened with a bang. The noise dissipated. No one had time to talk, and everyone leaned out to look at the list. Then a louder and more chaotic voice broke out. 31st on the Earth list, Shen Moi, the 10,000 feet of condensed ice. 59th on the Earth list, Su Guinian, the heavenly secrets. 87th on the Earth list, Liu Rui, the 100-armed heavenly king. 2 heavenly beings and 1 Yuanzi. The crowd cheered the names of the only 3 Earth list grandmasters in Zijing. The Earth list ended at 100 people at Fengmu Bay, the wind sweeping the clouds. Below that, after being locked for a year, the top of the heavenly pride list finally changed as gun champion Guyu turned 24 on the new year. The person announcing the list cleared his throat and continued in a loud voice. First on the heavenly pride list, Chu Jianj. The Wudang divine sword, from Xianan, Zhan's Hao, born in the 5th year of Zhang, a disciple of the heavenly sword sect, practicing the Tongshan sword sutra, with the innate 6 combination cultivation. Further down, there were more names familiar to the people of Liang's Hao. 17th on the heavenly pride list, Chu Lui, the little Dao emperor, from Zuman, Hezhao, a disciple of the Shur sect, with the innate 4 combination cultivation. Hong Fam curled his lips. Number 45 on the Xianjiao list, Northwind Shan Yubo, born in the Zijing Shen family, studied the Ice Soul Classic, and has the innate 2nd combination cultivation. This is the uncle who is only 4 years older than Shen Tixin. Number 88 on the Xianjiao list, Flipping River Dragon Aoshiji. Number 91 on the Xianjiao list, Finger-Snapping Thunderbolt Xiao Han He. The person announcing the list from the top of the Xianjiao list to the bottom of the Xianjiao list, and his slightly hoarse voice suddenly rose. Number 100 on the Xianjiao list, Red-Faced God Su Pifeng, born in the Zijing Su family, the master of the giant spirit face star, and has the Heaven Man interaction cultivation. The overwhelming cheers broke out again. The strongest one came from Hong Fan and his family upstairs. Chapter 260 Compassion. In this world, the old goes and the new comes. In this 3 lists, 2 old people were removed from Liang's Hao Xianjiao. But Su Pifeng's sudden rise filled the gap, keeping the number of Zijing Xianjiao on the list at 6. In the square at the bridgehead, the sound waves surged. It diffused in the atmosphere, like an invisible and huge living creature. On the 2nd floor of Kijing, the windows along the street were crowded with guests leaving. Only no one stood up at Hongfan's table, like an isolated island in the ocean. The list has indeed been released. The Vanity Fair has not yet dispersed. The gong was struck on Xianzhen Bridge. The servants of the Shen family announced that a 3-day buffet would be set up in front of the mansion to celebrate their young master's entry into the top half of the Xianjiao list. For a while, everyone shouted the name of Shuifeng. The sound waves also rose to the east. Not long after, Xiao Han He, who was wearing a veil and hiding in the crowd between the buildings, was accidentally discovered. He seemed helpless, jumped up, and flew away. The sound then chased westward. The figure of fingertip Thunderbolt was no longer visible. Zhan Yuanzi held his chin with one hand and a wine glass with the other, listening carefully to the quarrel next door. One group was young people, not yet of age, wearing martial arts uniforms. The other group was middle-aged and plump. The topic was originally about whether Xiao Daodi could become the top of the Xianjiao list. They argued about it and couldn't agree on the reason. Then they turned to discuss whether Chu Lui, who was born in Hezhao, could be considered a Liang's Hao Xianjiao. Several people soon blushed. Zhan Yuanzi was amused. "People are really interesting," he whispered, and suddenly raised his voice to interrupt. "We are brown-clothed common people, and we have no dispute with the 3 lists. Can we share the glory just by wishful thinking to identify with one of them? My friends, you know Chu Lui, but Chu Lui doesn't know you." Zhan Yuanzi raised his wine glass. "Why hurt the harmony?" The 2 groups looked over. "My brother, what you said is very true." Hong Fan also turned around and said, "It is possible that the little Dao Emperor is not a person worth making friends with. Instead of arguing about him, why not drink together?" He first looked at the group of middle-aged people. Several people immediately stopped arguing, said sorry, and raised their glasses to drink. Hong Fan smiled and looked at the young men. "You are just jealous of the little Dao Emperor." He said this in his heart. His smile froze. Hong Fan was asking for trouble and drank a glass. Wu Ruai rarely saw Hong Fan being humiliated, and smiled with his hands covering his mouth. Young people still have poor eyesight. They can't tell that I am a master. Hong Fan shook his head and said. Where do you have so much eyesight? Zhang Yuanzi shook his head and pointed out. It's because those brothers came early and saw the scene where the red-faced god took the initiative to talk to you. Hong Fan was speechless. Master Lu Yun also smiled when he saw this, and leaned over to take the empty cups. Young martial artists yearn for geniuses. It's always been like this. 10 years ago, every time I heard the more than 200 names on the list, I thought it was my turn to continue. He filled the glasses and pushed them back in front of everyone. Life is so difficult. Why not dream for a few more years? Yan Yulin chuckled. After the age of 24, when you look at the list, everyone will be like you and me, like wooden men. Isn't it boring? He clinked glasses with Master Lu Yun. It's not all us today. Yuan Zusong waved his hand. There are still 3 people under the age of 24 at this table. He looked at Wu Ruai, Bai Jiasi, and Hong Fan. Why aren't you excited? Yuan Zusong asked Wu Ruai. I'm not talented enough, Wu Ruai answered without thinking. My mother always says so, and I think so too, but those who walk fast may not go the farthest, she added. Sister Ruai has always been down to earth, but she is better than I was back then. Yuan Zusong nodded. Where's Brother Bai? I was dreaming, but now I'm awake, he replied calmly, stroking the finely stitched sachet on his waist. I used to only see the road, but now I'm back to my senses and don't know where I want to go, everyone seemed to be thinking. Then, 8 eyes moved to the last person. Hong Fan was about to speak when he saw everyone sighing and drinking in silence. At this moment, the cheers outside the building reached a new high. Everyone turned their heads and looked down, and saw the crowd in the square waving and shouting, heading towards the Whale Rider building. The sound waves came over layer by layer, drowning out all the conversations on the second floor. Hong Fan listened and distinguished. The cheers were mixed at first, and finally gradually unified. But they were shouting the name of the red-faced god. Obviously, Su Pifang upstairs showed up. What are you talking about with such a noise? Master Lu Yun smiled bitterly. At such a close distance, Hong Fan could hardly hear him speak, and could only distinguish by his lip shape. To join in the fun today is really asking for trouble, Master Lu Yun said as he stood up. Disperse, disperse, everyone went downstairs to pay the bill and bowed to each other. Hong Fan and the group of 5 people who returned to Dongchang squeezed into the crowd on the street and walked upstream to Xianzhen Bridge. After walking a few dozen meters, he felt something in his heart and felt that someone was watching him. Hong Fan continued to move forward calmly. After 3 steps, he suddenly turned around, crossed a vast sea of people, and looked directly at the high place of the Whale Rider. Box number 1, Block A, on the 4th floor, on the windowsill. 3 people stood side by side. On the left was a beautiful and plump woman, gently holding the arm of the person next to her. It was Aos Hickson. On the right was a well-proportioned and handsome young man, introverted and peaceful, with a 5-point similarity to Aos Hickson. Probably her brother Aos Hiji. In the middle of the two, the tall and strong Su Pifeng, who was on the list for the first time, stood by the railing, surrounded by the cheers of the crowd. His eyes were empty, his smile was warm, and he rarely relaxed his facial expression. Hong Fan looked at him from afar, and suddenly remembered the sigh on Su Pifeng's face when they talked about the casualties in the bloody Battle of Jinhe before the results were announced. How could that be compassion? It was clearly suppressed envy. More than a month later. November 23rd, the winter solstice. At 7:45 a.m., the sun rose lazily. In this Hangwu Academy, old snow had been accumulating on the roadside for several days. The white was stained with soot, and the black was particularly eye-catching. The weather was freezing. Fortunately, the heater was lit in the Zizi Hall. This material was sent by the Anti-Smuggling Department of the Boat and Ship Administration. Jian Xian, who was sitting behind the wide table, said, pushing a booklet over. Follow the Yao River out of the city, 30 miles south. There is a river bend called Niu Yinbo, where a small dock is hidden. He added a piece of fine white charcoal to the stove under the table, flicked off the ash on his fingertips, and put his hands back into the sleeves of his cotton jacket. This place is too close to Zijing. There can't be any pirates. It's nothing more than smuggling and tax evasion. Across the table, Wu Hongling and Hong Fan sat next to each other in the middle. The remaining 3 pulled up chairs and sat in the back row. Hong Fan opened the booklet and looked through it. Zijing was formed by the river, and half of the people rely on the Yao River for their livelihood. Jiang Xian shrank his body, looked at the 5 people in single clothes across the table with envy, and continued. Such small docks are everywhere, fishing, ferrying, transporting groceries. It may not even be possible to collect taxes in these insect holes and rat holes, he explained to Hong Fan. It seemed that the youngest person in the hall was the dean. Wu Hongling sat calmly, and didn't seem to think there was anything wrong. Chapter 261 New Drinks in the Lake. Straight to the point, Jiang Xian continued. This case is led by the governor's office. Mr. Jin may have used some tricks to capture a few informants. Of course, the source of the information has nothing to do with us. It's written in the booklet that 2 days later at Niuai Inbo, the Fubo gang will smuggle a ship of goods to the south. Compared with the last case of Wang Mingke, he spoke more bluntly this time. I heard that even the pleasure boats on the Yao River are checked once a day, Bai Jiasi asked in confusion. With the news so intense, there are still people who dare to commit crimes. Do they really want money over life? Not necessarily, Jiang Xian smiled back. Life is difficult. Most of the time, it's not about whether there is a right or wrong choice, it's about knowing that there is no way forward, but having to go. The smuggling business on the Yao River is related to the livelihoods of countless people, but this is secondary. The key is that once you make some money, it's not so easy to get away. He leaned out and turned the booklet back a few pages. This is the cargo that Niu Yinbo is going to send out. Half of the cargo is linen for cover, and the other half is smuggled salt and armor. Across the wide table, several people frowned. Dahua follows the old system of the previous dynasty, with control over lakes and ponds, management of mountains and seas, and salt and iron monopoly. Smuggling salt and iron is a serious crime, not to mention that this iron is armor. Hong Fan lowered his head and flipped through the booklet, but didn't find the answer he wanted. Where does the cargo come from, and who does it send it to? So he looked up and asked. The salt probably comes from the west or north. There are many salt lakes along the Tongguang and Yuquan lines, and it is inexhaustible, Jiang Xian replied. As for armor, it is not rare. Which tyrant in the border area doesn't have private soldiers? Hearing this, everyone looked at Hong Fan. Well, we in Jinhe have always abided by the rules and only used leather armor, he touched his nose and replied. Jiang Xian smiled with his hands together, with an expression of guess whether I believe it or not. As for the buyers, the only one who can use a large amount of armor now is probably the Lord of Huiyang, he sighed. Hong Fan understood. Since the founding of the Dahua dynasty, the Huiyang Feng family has always been a first-class family, and after the rebellion of the 13th king, they were granted a fiefdom and became kings. The Fubo gang can deny the things they ordered for a while, but they can't deny it forever. Jiang Xian saw that everyone had finished reading the booklet, and reached out to take it back. This time, the requirements are also very simple: arrest people and intercept goods, and try not to kill anyone, he concluded. Hong Fan, you did a good job last time, and the admiral and the assistant minister praised you. Don't let them down. 2 days later, November 25th. Zijing, in the cold winter, rarely welcomed a warm day. The snow 2 days ago melted, and the weather was clear. 30 miles south of the city. The second team of 4 stopped their horses in front of a forest. I came to see it last night. The forest is not deep, only 2 miles, Hong Fan said, pointing to the top of his head. This bin here obviously refers to flying here. After the woodland, there's a wonton-shaped shallow bay, which is Niuai Inbo. As he said this, he slapped Honky Mappy. The latter got the order, his ears stood up, and he led his 3 companions to a thatched grass field that he had long been eyeing. There was a rammed earth road around the edge of the woods. Hong Fan naturally chose not to take the main road. He checked the weapons and half-body armor on the 3 teammates with his eyes, and led the way into the forest. Most of the trees in Zijing in winter have branches but no crowns. It is the same here. The exposed roots float on the ground, like twisted veins. The tall branches extend upwards, like hands pointing to the sky. The dry fallen leaves are all over the ground. The 4 people walked quickly across, making a sound of crushing. Niuai Inbo is not big, but the cargo ship that came today is very big. The large ship is 15 feet long and 3 feet wide. It can carry 200,000 to 300,000 caddies, but the draft is less than 10 feet, so it can use a small dock. Even in Zijing, this is the top river ship. The boat and the shore were connected by several planks. The boatmen were sweating profusely, and some of the stronger ones even took off their cotton-padded jackets and carried the goods naked. Not far from the shore, a thatched shed was built in advance. Under the shed was an incense table, and on the table was an incense burner. 3 incense sticks were emitting smoke. Yellow paper was burning, and rooster blood was sprinkled on the edge. When the fire subsided, a manager came down from the boat. "Master Wang, the goods are all ready, and the boat can be dispatched at any time," he said to the leader in front of the incense table. Today, everything went smoothly. The latter smiled. The man was about 40 years old, with a well-proportioned figure, wearing a round hat and a straight mustache. He turned around and took the hand of a short and strong man beside him. "On the way south, I will leave everything to Brother Zhuang. Dare not to do your best," the latter said in a deep voice. The man in the round hat nodded with satisfaction when he heard the words. Just as he was about to speak, he caught a glimpse of the manager's eyes on the boat. He turned his head and saw 4 imperial guards in red silk clothes coming out of the woods in the distance. The Fubo gang's followers' Adam's apples rolled. Several leaders of the Hunaran and Guantong realms suddenly looked gloomy. "Hurry up and start the boat," the man in the round hat whispered to the steward. As soon as the voice fell, dozens of people on the boat were like ants on a hot pot. They were all experienced and knew the pros and cons. They did their own work without being urged. Those who untied the cables, those who raised the sails, and those who raised the anchor. Several people on the shore exchanged glances. The man in the round hat led his men to meet them quickly, and clasped his fists in front of Hong Fan from a distance. "In a small place like Niuai Inpo, I don't know what can be done to trouble Master Hong and Lady Ruai." He laughed loudly, and he and his men blocked the way of Hong Fan and his party, not knowing whether it was unintentional or intentional. "I am Wang Jinglong, the leader of the Hangjiang Hall of the Fubo gang. Friends on the road often call me Master Yi. The one next to you is Fire Hand Zhuang Shao Idun." Wang Jinglong smiled and spoke fluently. Then he was interrupted by Hong Fan in a deep voice. "You don't think I'm here to make friends? Stop the boat." He pointed to the cargo ship in the distance with one hand. Wang Jinglong's face was slightly stiff. Mr. Hong broke Lin Liuqi's hand in Mingyu Tower and almost suffocated Mr. Liu. "How dare I, Wang, not listen to you?" He smiled bitterly. "But you don't know, we who make a living on the water all pay attention to auspiciousness. Today's auspicious time has arrived. I have lit incense and burned yellow paper, and have informed the goddess of the river. This boat really can't stop." Wang Jinglong smiled and bowed. "From north to south is downstream, and today is also a favorable wind. The sails are full." Hong Fan stopped talking nonsense and gave a look. Wu Ruai then went around from the side, intending to intercept the boat directly. The Fubo gang's minions did not dare to move. At this time, the short and strong man nicknamed Fire Hand took 2 steps sideways and intercepted her. There was a clang. Bai Jiasi and Zhan Yuanzi drew their swords. "Master Wang, are you going to fight us?" Hong Fan asked loudly, laughing instead of being angry. "Master Hong, please don't misunderstand." Wang Jinglong bowed again. "It's just some small business that can't be put on the table. Why is it so serious?" He lowered his posture, but his muscles were tense. The boat gradually left the shore. Hong Fan sneered and took the lead. Chapter 260 to Lion in hand. Using his toes, Hong Fan bounced 2 meters. His right leg was aimed at his opponent's ribs, and his hips were wide open. Wang Jinglong narrowed his eyes slightly and raised his arm to block with his left hand. Seeing this, Hong Fan changed his leg technique from the middle to the upper part. If it was Liu Xingxin, he would definitely be hit. But Wang Jinglong was the leader of the Fubo gang and was good at fighting, so he naturally reserved some strength. The instep hit the forearm, and there was a bang. Hong Fan paused, and his opponent slid back half a step. Just as both sides were catching their breath, the sand world started. Behind Wang Jinglong, a ball of sand flow jumped up from his blind spot and covered his head and face. This move should have hit. But when the sand ball was close to half a meter away, it suddenly exploded in the air. Hong Fan's face did not change, but he was surprised. He retracted his leg and stepped down, shaking the earth. The dense sand curtain rose up and rushed forward. Hong Fan stepped forward to catch up, and just as he was about to attack, he heard the air pressure pressing against his ears. The entire sand wall was pushed back. "Interesting," Hong Fan praised in a low voice, raised his leg instead of his palm, and blasted out a fire cloud. The sand curtain was disintegrated by the flames. He stretched his leg to the highest point, and after gathering strength, he chopped it down like an axe, but Wang Jinglong dodged it by spinning around. The two exchanged positions. "Are you in the lesser Wuluo realm?" Hong Fan asked. "Your killing method is extraordinary. It is not easy for a warrior in the Force realm to use his true energy to evenly shock back the sand curtain just now." He thought of his colleagues in the Tiki in turn, and only felt that Master Lu Yun's Yunjin had some potential. In front of Master Hong, "It's not worth mentioning," Wang Jinglong said modestly, and his smile disappeared. With Hong Fan's current reputation in Zijing, a verbal evaluation can be regarded as an honor by second and third-rate warriors. "I underestimated Master Wang," Hong Fan replied, and he became completely serious. He didn't think much of the warriors in the Hunran realm. At the beginning of the fight, he was thinking of killing the opponent in one round. But this Master Yi is obviously not comparable to those scholars from aristocratic families in Zijing City. You must know that although Bai Taiping looks good, he may not be able to defeat Zhu Gu with 3 against 1. The soil is dehydrated. The sand flow climbs up the one-piece armor, which expands and contracts like breathing. Hong Fan slides and delivers a long fist. This punch is very fast and difficult to dodge. Wang Jinglong instinctively opens his palm to block. The fist and palm are about to meet, but Hong Fan twists his ankle horizontally and suddenly stops. The rhythm is staggered. Wang Jinglong slaps in the air. Behind the sand armor, thunder explodes and continues to exert force. Since he was an amateur fighter in his previous life, boxing has been Hong Fan's strength. But after having the Fate Star, he has experienced hundreds of battles and can almost always win with hard power. It has been more than half a year since he became a Tiki. This is the first time that Hong Fan has used the technique of rhythm change in battle. The wind pressure rises again. There seems to be no obstacle between the two. But there is still an invisible object blocking the fist, and it explodes suddenly. Hong Fan slid back a step. If he hadn't been wearing sand armor, he would have been injured. "Can you keep the true energy from leaving the body?" Hong Fan asked, realizing the key to the opponent's killing method. The King's Wang family's unique skill lie on iron hand. Sorry to make me laugh, Wang Jinglong was slightly pleased. During the brief exchange of blows between the two sides, the boat had already left the shore and was heading towards the middle of the river with the wind. Wang Jinglong caught a glimpse of all this and breathed a sigh of relief. Concentrating his mind, he suddenly launched an attack and turned around and ran while Hong Fan was shrinking his defense. From the beginning, Wang Jinglong had never thought of fighting to the end. The opponent was the Tiki, and the Fubo gang didn't even dare to kill him, let alone silence him. What's more, there was a clear gap in their combat power. Hong Fan had long been famous in Zijing, and all the intelligence he could collect had been searched by the Fubo gang. Since the exchange of blows, Wang Jinglong had consciously guarded against the sand gnats, instant steps, sand-flowing knives and other killing methods. But even with the advantage of intelligence, the situation was still just a delay after 3 rounds of fighting. The leader wanted to run, so Hong Fan started to chase him. "I'll take the men, you guys intercept the boats," he shouted, raising a gust of sand and leaving the battle group. The 4 had been working together for a long time, and their tacit understanding gradually deepened. Zhan Yuanzi slashed with his long sword, taking on Zhuang Xiaoyun, who had a similar cultivation level. Wu Ruai freed her hands, dodged and leaped, escaping from the encirclement like a butterfly. Frost gathered under her feet. She stepped onto the river surface, and the water turned into ice where she landed. The river was wide. Wu Ruai schemed over the waves and chased after the boat. In the withered forest, fallen leaves were flying. The two chased and fled. Wang Jinglong had an obvious advantage in cultivation, and his normal speed was faster. But he had to keep leaving Lian behind him to delay him because he took into account Hong Fan's instant step. The sand and wind passed through the trees, like a boning knife, causing continuous gas explosions. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of meters passed. Although the two sides did not fight directly, they consumed a lot of energy. "Why do you have to force me, Master Hong?" Wang Jinglong begged loudly while flying. His words were dry, and it seemed as if there was a piece of charcoal in his throat. This time, Hong Fan was silent, and he only focused on sweeping mines. The distance was shortened, and the forest was almost at the end. Wang Jinglong was torn between his conscience and his desire. He knew that Hong Fan could fly, and there was no way out if he just ran away. Gritting his teeth, Wang Jinglong turned around and was ready to fight again. At this moment, the thunder-like sound of horse hooves suddenly sounded nearby. The dead leaves rolled up like a flying dragon. The tiger-eating beast roared and rushed out. It was majestic and reckless, as if it came prepared. Wang Jinglong's pupils condensed, and his palms stretched out in succession, and he was about to retreat. How could he be too late? The two sides came into contact, triggering a series of thunder-like explosions. Wang Jinglong was knocked into the air and stuck to the tree trunk for a moment before falling down. The red flag, which had made a brilliant appearance for less than a few breaths, rolled out diagonally and fell flat on its face. Hong Fan rushed forward. Under the tree, Wang Jinglong was pressing his chest and spitting blood. He didn't know how many bones were broken. Hong Fan had just cut off the opponent's ki and pulse when he heard movement behind him. On the plowed black soil, Honky was shaking his head and humming as if to ask for credit. Unfortunately, before he could stand up straight, he propped up his forelegs and fell straight again. Hong Fan's heart skipped a beat and he hurried forward to check. Honky's body was covered in blood, but his breathing was still steady. His injuries were not serious. It turned out that he was just fainted. A few minutes later, Hong Fan carried Wang Jinglong back to Niuyanbo. The dispute on the shore had ended. The underworld hero Zhuang Xiaoyun was injured and exhausted, and the rest of the Fubo gang members squatted on the ground with their heads in their hands, waiting for Zunbai and the others to deal with them. On the river, the cargo ship was anchored in the center of the river bay, being ruthlessly eaten by water and fire from both ends. 50 or 60 meters offshore, there was a piece of thin ice floating. Wu Ruai stood on it, holding the manager of the Fubo gang in his hand. Seeing that most of the cargo ship sank, he was somewhat at a loss. The four reunited on the shore. The incident was not complicated. Seeing that the Imperial Guards were about to catch up, the ship suddenly caught fire, and more than a dozen people jumped off the ship and ran away. Only this manager did not have the ability to swim in winter, and was rescued, taken, by Wu Ruai. The fire was so fierce that it was obvious that either kerosene was used or gunpowder was prepared. At this point, whether it was good or bad, the matter was already a foregone conclusion. Hong Fan threw his hand and shot a whistling arrow. Not long after, dozens of government officials came along the dirt road. The leader wore a soft-footed hat, had a goatee, and held a folding fan in the winter. This person was called Hang Wei. He was the most trusted by Jin Ziming among the staff of the governor's office. He was introduced to Hong Fan by Jian Xian 2 days ago. Chapter 263 Jumping Ship. The governor of Dahua is a second-rank official, who is appointed for the purpose of handling matters and is not a regular position. Whenever he is ordered to do so, he must confront the intricate local system, so he has the power to appoint his own subordinates and hire a historian privately. Jin Ziming's shogunate in Zijing has more than 40 people. Although these people are not regular officials appointed by the central government, they often have more decision-making power than the central government. Heng Wei in front of him is the chief clerk of the governor's office and a core figure. Heng has often heard that the second team of Zijing Tiki is brave in taking on responsibilities, and their reputation is indeed well-deserved. He laughed heartily and bowed to the four Tiki. It's just following orders. Hong Fan ignored his friendly attitude and replied indifferently. Heng Wei was not annoyed and went forward to check on the captives. Mr. Zhuang has such a big reputation in Febei Mountain and Rose Sea. Why bother to stir up the muddy water on Yao River? He asked Zhuang Xiaoyun first. The latter had a sullen face and said nothing. Heng Wei said hey, and looked at the pale Wang Jinglong again. This must be Mr. Yishi, who I have known for a long time but never met. You look so bad. Are you seriously injured? He waved his folding fan lightly, pretending to be sincere. Wang Jinglong looked up and forced a weak smile. I heard that the leader of Hengjiang Hall is the pillar of Fubo Gang, but I didn't expect that he would do this personally. Heng Wei sneered at this. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted. White cloth, pretending. Wang Jinglong glanced at the folding fan and mocked. Heng Wei heard the words, his knuckles tightened, and his smile was instantly extinguished. He put away the folding fan, stared at Wang Jinglong coldly, and turned to Hong Fan. Young Master Hong, may I ask where the boat and the cargo are? They are all in the middle of the river, Hong Fan replied. Heng Wei's eyebrows tightened. The river is empty. Where is the boat? They prepared flammable materials on the boat, and when they saw they couldn't escape, they sank in the river, Hong Fan added. Heng Wei's expression relaxed. So that's how it is. Since the cargo has sunk, they can't escape. It's just a matter of salvaging it. As for these suspects, why don't you let us take them away? The governor and I will definitely appreciate your friendship, he asked tentatively. The superiors have ordered that these people be taken back to this Hangwon for custody. Please don't make it difficult for Hang Xiubu. Hong Fan shook his head decisively and refused to accept the empty promise. Of course not. Seeing his determination, Heng Wei had to give up. A few days later, November 29th. It was deep winter and cold. In the south of Zhejiang City, the north wind blew through the streets, blowing snow like sand. Next to the cargo terminal, there is a large house covering a large area. This is the headquarters of the Fubo gang. The courtyard is locked and there are guards everywhere. The second entrance is to the main hall, and a plaque with the words Ji Shui Fu Bo is hung high. On the table are large red roses that are blooming against the season. The window is half open, and the wind is cold. But with the 4 heaters in the room, it is not stuffy or dry, and the temperature is just right. In the armchair at the top of the left row, a 50-year-old man with gray hair sat on half of the chair. This man is called Shang Lifu, the leader of the Chenggain Hall of the Fu Bo gang, in charge of logistics and food. Miss, I have been waiting for a full hour. Is the leader still not free? He suppressed his emotions and asked the person above him. The girl on the armchair held her chin with her hand, her legs curled up under her red skirt, leaving a section of her snow-white ankles. There is no one else who can be honored as the eldest lady by the Hall Master except Aos Hickson. She chuckled when she heard the words, her eyes narrowed into a pair of crescents, and she picked up the ginger tea and drank half a cup first. There have been a lot of disputes in the gang recently, and Uncle Shang knows it. After drinking the hot soup and exhaling a breath of hot air, she smiled back. If it's not a big deal, Uncle, why don't you follow the usual practice and tell me first? Maybe my niece can take care of it. She blinked her bright eyes and glanced at Shang Lifu. The latter's temples were sweating. Uncle Shang doesn't mean that. There is no matter big or small in the gang. How can the eldest lady not take care of it? He said hurriedly, but he regretted coming here today. But now that he had said this, he could no longer pretend to be deaf and dumb. Eldest lady, Alice, the main thing is that this matter is half public and half private. Shang Lifu forced a smile. Uncle has been running the boat in the gang for half his life. He will be 60 in 2 years. This body is really rusty. The eczema between the waist and thighs grows and heals and grows again. If you are not careful, you will get blood all over your hands. When it rains, my knees feel like they are stabbed with a knife. I think the position of the head of Chenggain Hall will be handed over to the young people at the time. He sighed with a bit of vicissitudes. Aos Hickson listened silently, lowered his head and pondered for a moment, and then looked up again. I understand. The situation is tough. Uncle Shang is going to quit the gang, she blurted out expressionlessly. Not quitting the gang, not quitting the gang. Shang Lifu waved his hands quickly. I am planning to retire. Why did you choose this time? Aos Hickson looked at him quietly. His voice was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Shang Lifu finally showed a trace of shame. In fact, I had this idea a few years ago, but I was too embarrassed to report it to the gang leader. It's just that I saw the child grow up slowly, and I unconsciously became short-sighted. I want to live a more stable life more and more, he explained with some difficulty. Aos Hickson finally nodded. Uncle has made great contributions to the gang over the years. Do you plan to stay in Zhejiang in the future? She asked softly. Shang Lifu saw that Aos Hickson was a little more relaxed, and couldn't help pulling at his sweaty collar. I'm not staying in Zhejiang anymore. I plan to move to Honggai City. His tone became brighter. What will you do for a living then? Aos Hickson asked again. I haven't decided yet, but I still have some savings, so I can always make a living. Shang Lifu smiled. The girl on the armchair lowered her legs, tapping the ground with her embroidered shoes, and took over the conversation. Uncle Shang is planning to live an easy life, when I'm the most uneasy in the gang. She pressed her knee-length skirt with her hands and blurted out. Shang Lifu's breath was choked. Then, he saw Aos Hickson's smile blooming completely. The red flowers on the table lost their color in an instant. Uncle Niu and Uncle Wang are still in the prison of Xianwudan. Business on Yao River has stopped for 2 months, and the people below are very noisy. So, does Uncle think that the Fubo gang is going to collapse and want to jump ship? She asked with a smile covering her mouth. Why would I have such an idea? Shang Lifu felt cold all over, stuttered in reply, and unconsciously glanced at the heater and the window. The charcoal fire was hot, but his heart was cold. With a gang leader here, the Liu family is even more of a towering tree. How can Jin Ziming move? He forced a breath and smiled. How about Uncle insisting and escorting the gang for a while longer? Aos Hickson raised his eyebrows. The eldest lady has spoken, and we must obey her, Shang Lifu replied without blinking. Really? Aos Hickson chuckled. If Uncle really thought so, why did he send his wife and children out of the city yesterday? Shang Lifu's face lost color after hearing this question. How do you know? Did you touch them? He gritted his teeth and shouted, and the wooden handrail creaked. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 Dawn. Aos Hickson was too lazy to reply. Fubo can't help, she shook her head. But Uncle is right about one thing, you are old. Aos Hickson stood up and walked out of the hall. The warm wind blew across her face, and the fragrance was charming and lingering. But Shang Lifu smelled only unspeakable fear. Miss, forgive me once. He suddenly got up from his seat, but didn't dare to chase her. Finally, his knees softened and he actually knelt down at the door. Aos Hickson heard the sound of bricks and stopped. Uncle still thinks I am a little girl. She looked back, revealing half of her red lips, and her laughter was like a silver bell. Su Lang, don't make it too difficult to clean up. The red skirt turned around the door. Then, a tall figure strode in from outside the hall. Shang Lifu's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. You? He climbed up and looked up at Su Pifeng. His lips stammered several times, but he didn't dare to scold him. Sweat dripped from his temples. I want to see the gang leader. The words lingered in the hall for several times before being swallowed by the wind from the window. Su Pifeng said nothing and rolled up his sleeves. He smiled as always, revealing his sharp white teeth. That night, snow fell from the sky and lay on the glazed tiles. There was a sound of puffing. The air was so cold that it was about to freeze. Dew condensed on the glass windows. The warm wind flowed along the fire path in the wall, making the room feel like spring. Stepping into the bed, the soft fragrance was so strong that Su Pifeng felt a little greasy. He gently opened the curtain and stepped barefoot on the thick carpet. Aos Hickson's sleep is very light and cannot be disturbed. Su Pifeng walked to the table and sat down. Turned over the cup and poured water. The coldness spread over the tongue, rolled over the throat, and went all the way down to the stomach. Then, there seemed to be a bloody sweetness in the mouth. The moonlight came in from the window, like floating water. Su Pifeng sat like a statue, with silver light reflected in his eyes, and carefully recalled the process of killing in the afternoon. Shang Lifu has the 3 meridians of perfection. But killing a frightened person is no harder than killing a stray dog. Su Pifeng poured a second glass of water, dipped his fingertips in it, and wrote on the table, 116. This number is the number of lives he has taken for Aos Hickson. Just like the 114 times before, every time, Su Pifeng would think of the first time. More than 3 years ago, less than 4 years ago. He was not yet 19, and he had been in the giant spirit phase for years, but he had just entered the penetration state. As a Star Lord, he was no longer looked down upon in the clan. Of course, he was not looked up to much. The days were dull. Until he met the 14-year-old Aos Hickson. Like a moth meeting a fire, a mouse meeting a cat. The martial arts arena of the Jinsei Gate. The arena is made of square stones, and the cracks are full of twisted and rusty iron. It's been a long time. In the faded memory, people and things are all black with different concentrations. That is the fear that has settled to this day and cannot be dispelled. The first public competition, the first time signing a life and death agreement, the first time seeing blood. Driving the giant spirit phase, I was so nervous that I couldn't take a step. My body was covered with scars, and I couldn't tell the difference between blood and sweat. Then the flying iron nail pierced my lower abdomen. The feeling seemed like yesterday. The first feeling was not pain, but a piece of ice sliding into my flesh. But it was so hot. Xingjin fell down, and the whole Jinseaman cheered. Su Pifeng still couldn't figure out what was buzzing in the air. The last glance was cast at Aos Hickson on the high platform. In the gray and white world, only her long skirt and lips shared the color with blood, fishy red. He was dying. But she was laughing. At that moment, Su Pifeng realized what kind of madness he had gone and what kind of person he liked. He was suddenly not afraid of death. The giant spirit phase became more active than ever before. His physical strength was replenished. The broken muscles were involved again. When the mad giant was pulled away, the opponent had already died. No one dared to look at the newly dyed red face. No one dared to smell the fishy smell all over his body. From then on, at least for the first few dozen times, killing always made him feel sick and want to vomit. But Su Pifang couldn't stop. Time and again, he always wanted to see the satisfied smile of the girl in the red skirt again. Early December, dusk. Water in Zijing freezes into ice, and there are few pedestrians on the street. The long wind rolls across the sky, sweeping away the clouds. In the south of Dongcheng, a 3-story house guarded by government officials opened its doors, and people kept coming in and out. This is the new residence of the governor. Liang Xiao has been the governor of the state for more than 10 years. Therefore, when Jin Ziming first came to Zijing to perform his duties, he couldn't even rent a government office. It was not until Wang Ninkei's case was handled that he borrowed this vacant house of the wealthy businessman and moved out of the official guild hall. In the governor mansion, half of the snow had been swept, only to ensure that there was a path between the courtyards. The doors and windows of the study were closed tightly. On the couch, 2 people sat opposite each other. The man on the right wore a futao and a goatee. He was Heng Wei, who pushed the new Yinbo case. The man on the left is over 60 years old, thin, with dark bags under his eyes, but his eyes are sharp and vigorous. This man is Jin Ziming. There is a chessboard on the low table, with white on the left and black on the right, and it is in the middle. The great man Quan Songjin, who practices water-based skills in Hezhou, has been invited to Zijing this morning. Heng Wei looked at the chessboard and reported. The cargo of the ship in New Yinbo will be salvaged soon. As he said, he could not tell the local chess situation and lost the first move. That's good. Jin Ziming's face was slightly relaxed, and he continued to attack and kill the advantage. I went to see Wang Jinglong again in the afternoon, but this guy still didn't give in. He was wearing a thick coat like a tortoise shell, holding a hand warmer, and his staff didn't respond on the chessboard for a long time. Looking up, he saw that Heng Wei's fingers were trembling with cold, and he couldn't hold the chess pieces steadily. In the cold winter, you are still wearing this scholar's clothes, and you have to rely on shaking to keep warm, Jin Ziming scolded and handed over the stove in his hand. Heng Wei took it generously, but he was stubborn. Governor, the fact that your mansion cannot buy coal is a trick of the Fubo gang. If I put on more clothes, wouldn't that be a sign of weakness? He warmed his hands for a while and finally made a move. The matter of Shang Lifu of Chengyang Hall has also been reported. According to the information from 3 sources, he did not die suddenly of illness, but died in the Fubo gang's headquarters. This kind of ruthless method is the style of the AO family girl. Heng Wei reported another thing. 3 of the 9 hall masters are gone, and the fire should be almost ready, Jin Ziming replied. The 2 sides fought for a few more rounds, and there was a knock on the door. It was the shogun's chief historian who came in. Governor, Brother Heng, there is great progress, he whispered, unable to suppress his joy. The locations of the 3 core bases of Fu boxing have been determined, and the account books of Yao smuggling must be in these places. Hearing this, Heng Wei breathed heavily and clenched his fists. Jin Ziming just nodded faintly. It's getting dark, my old eyes can't see the chessboard clearly. Light a candle, he said. Not long after, the chief secretary closed the door and left. A small candle was lit on the chessboard. It was Heng Wei's turn to make a move. He pondered for a moment and finally sighed. The governor is determined, the situation is set, and the subordinates can't mess up anymore. Another game. He handed back the hand warmer and was about to collect the pieces, but was stopped. Today's leisure is over, Jin Ziming smiled. Besides, this game has not been decided yet. Why not? Heng Wei asked back, pointing to the order of a dozen steps with his fingers. The black pieces and the big dragon are dead, there is no way to save them, he said stubbornly. The chess moves are limited, but human affairs are unlimited. Jin Ziming shook his head and laughed, exhaling white air. Why not wait until the world is clear, and then you and I can finish this game? He got off the couch and pushed open the door with both hands. It was already dark outside. The new snow in the courtyard reflected the moon, and a large area of silver light was reflected into the study, which temporarily overwhelmed the candlelight and was a bit dazzling. At this moment, Heng Wei thought he saw the dawn. Chapter 265 Fighting Grass. December 6th, noon. The solar term is minor cold. Zhejiang is located in the northwest, and the remaining heat of the earth has been exhausted. It is the coldest time of the year. The snow in Chori Mansion has accumulated very thickly, and there are jagged ice ridges under the eaves. A charcoal stove is burning in the side room. The window is left cracked to prevent fire. Carbon monoxide. Tao Hongliov, under the command of Aunt Liu, is sorting out the New Year's goods to be taken back to Jinhei. In the huge 4-story house, only the martial arts field is freezing. Zhan Yuanzi is practicing swordsmanship, which is rare. Hong Fan is practicing the Yan Liu Gong Foundation building fist again and again. Every time he punches, hot air rises. After half an hour, when he stopped, the snow on the rammed earth had evaporated. I haven't seen you practice such basic boxing for a long time, Zhan Yuanzi guessed while practicing stabbing swords. I guess your cultivation has improved. I can't hide it from you, Hong Fan smiled lightly. Before I faced Wen Jinglong, I had already opened up the 5th meridian, the Dai meridian. As of today, I have also opened up 20% of the 6th meridian, the Chao meridian. Speaking of which, the weather has been unusually cold these days. There are even ice floes on the Yao River, but I just feel my whole body naturally warm and thawed, and I don't even need the flame flow force. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. This is the special feature of the Chang meridian, Zhan Yuanzi replied. The Chang meridian controls the qi and blood of the 12 meridians and is revered as the sea of blood. After I open up this meridian, I no longer feel that there is cold weather in Zhejiang. He shared his experience, but saw some depression between his teammates' brows. Your cultivation has improved. Why are you still depressed? Zhan Yuanzi asked with concern. Nothing, I just feel that the speed of cultivation is not as fast as before, Hong Fan sighed lightly. I entered the Guantong realm in March last year, and by the end of March this year, I had the cultivation of 3 meridians. Now it's almost 9 months, and I have only opened up 2 strange meridians, he said with worry. Zhan Yuanzi opened his mouth slightly, and it took a long while before he answered. My dear Master Hong, you really don't know the hunger of a hungry man when you are full. I opened up the Chong channel 4 years ago, now 4 years have passed, and the Du channel is only 1/3 open. I am relieved, at least the road ahead is not blocked. It's been less than 9 months, and you have opened up the Yanhua E channel and Yanghua E channel, and the Chong channel is also 20%. What else are you not satisfied with? He said with his hands on his hips, and he was so angry that he couldn't practice sword. Hong Fan didn't admit this. When I have a lot of things to do, I practice for 3 hours a day, and when I have less things to do, I practice from morning to night. You practice sword every 3 days, practice once every 7 days, but you paint every day. How can our progress be compared? He retorted. Zhan Yuanzi heard this, his face calmed down. It's true that I love painting, but I'm not lazy in martial arts. Martial artists always make the most progress when they are young. From the inner vision realm to the penetration realm, the progress is smooth. I can gain something from practicing diligently every day. I was very motivated at that time, but later, when I threw 3 days, 5 days, or even a month into it and heard no response, it was different. So I'm not lazy, I'm tired. At the end, he smiled helplessly. This smile suddenly showed a bit of vicissitudes. Hong Fan looked at his teammates and couldn't help being stunned. Zhan Yuanzi was gentle and elegant, and his appearance didn't look old. After getting along for a long time, people would forget that he was a 37-year-old lonely middle-aged man who hadn't married yet. You're right, I was impatient, Hong Fan exhaled deeply. In his 2 lives, he was the kind of person who prepared everything in advance. How could he not expect the slowdown in practice? In fact, for Xingjian, Tiki was already the profession with the best chance of killing high-level warriors under legal and reasonable conditions. If they want to go faster, they can only go to the borders to fight against foreign races. But high returns also mean high risks. The battlefield is full of swords and knives. No one can guarantee that they will always be the one who survives. The martial arts field returned to silence. Zhan Yuanzi practiced sword. Hong Fan practiced boxing. After a while, Shen Hong's call came from outside the courtyard wall. It was said that someone from the Zhangwu Academy had sent a message to gather at Zizi Hall immediately. After changing clothes and tying their hair, the two went north. The red walls were covered with white snow. In Zizi Hall, Jian Xian and Zhu Wenhua sat behind the table. In front, there were more than a dozen people, including the Tiki and the Sidai. The first team had 5 people including Lu Yunxi. The second team had 4 people, The remaining 5 people were from the 5th team that Hong Fan was not familiar with. The doors and windows were closed. There's an urgent job from the boat office. I want your 3 teams to handle it, Jian Xian said. You all must know that Fuboxing is backed by the Fubo gang. They are half-river gods in this section of Yao Zijing, he sneered. The governor's office has found 3 secret halls of Fuboxing. It is said that they are responsible for the affairs of the rivers and lakes and smuggling by water, and keep the account books and records. You will each take one, Jian Xian said, making a gesture. Deacon Zhu Wenhua, who was sitting next to him, stood up and handed the 3 paper books in his hand to the captains of the 3 teams. The second one was handed to Wu Ruai. She took it quite unexpectedly. The feeling of being a captain was so distant that it was a little strange. Thank you, Deacon, Wu Ruai replied in a low voice, feeling a little awkward. She pretended to flip through the booklet and glanced at it. I don't know if she read it or what she read. Then she quickly stuffed it to Hong Fan. The 3 teams each looked through the intelligence, and there was only rustling sound for a while. The Boat and Ship Bureau requires us to cooperate. After everyone wrote down the key points, Jian Xian spoke again. But I still say what I said before, do things according to the regulations, not a cent more, not a cent less. Lunch will be in the hall. From now on, you cannot leave this courtyard. Everyone will set off at noon, he said solemnly and sat down behind the wide table. A moment later, the meals divided in wooden boxes were brought in. An hour and a half later, it was the time agreed with the boat office. 3 teams of cavalry in plain clothes and wearing waist badges left this Hangwu courtyard from the side door. The first team went to the east of Zijing. The 5th team went along the river to the south of the city. The second team's target was in the west of the city. Hong Fan and his 4 men kept walking and crossed the Xianzhen Bridge. Standing at the bridgehead were Chu Chuk Sung Sing and Kijing. The team turned south from the bottom of the restaurant. There was a constant flow of people and noisy voices. Hong Fan was the first to walk in front, but his mind was uneasy. He vaguely felt that he was being spied on. The destination of the mission was Dao Xiao Street in the west of the city. Hong Fan remembered that this street was very wide, with shops on both sides, and it was very popular. For almost every festival in the past 6 months, Aunt Leah would bring peach blossoms and willows to buy here. Turning from south to west, there is one last crossroad. Bai Jiasi switched his scabbard sword to his left hand. Hong Fan glanced at Zhan Yuanzi. He also frowned. Since the Boat and Ship Bureau wants to transfer us, there must be masters stationed in these halls. Hong Fan slowed down his pace and said in a low voice. Ruai and Jiasi will go to intercept the retreat, and I will go in through the main gate first. As they were talking, the sound of wind blew over their heads. P.S. I spent some time designing the fight with Aosiji during the day. It's sometimes hard to remember things like martial arts moves. I will continue writing the 2nd chapter tonight, and it may be finished later. Chapter 266, Water Solution. Dao Kao Street has always been a busy place in Zijing. At this crossroad, there are cars and horses coming and going, and pedestrians are everywhere. Hong Fan and the other 4 were about to turn around when they suddenly heard the sound of wind. It turned out that a man jumped down from the roof of the street and blocked the road. This was a young man. He had delicate features, a dark blue military uniform, and a restrained and confident look. I apologize for blocking the road, he said loudly, bowing to the 4 people. Then he introduced himself to Hong Fan alone. Mr. Hong, this is the 2nd time we meet. I am Aosiji. This person only said his name. It seemed that these 3 words should be known to everyone in Zijing City. This was indeed the case. The crowded crowd at the entrance of Dao Kao Street was originally impatient after being blocked, but when they heard the names of Hong Fan and Aosiji, the noise suddenly dropped and they actually stopped on their own. I didn't expect that I would formally meet Brother Ao in such an occasion. Hong Fan forced a very faint smile. He knew that the first meeting the other party was talking about should be the last time the 3 lists were released. At that time, the 2 of them were upstairs and downstairs, and they must have become the scenery in each other's eyes. After greeting, Hong Fan's smile turned cold. After crossing Xianzhen Bridge, I always felt that someone was spying on me. I guess it was Brother Ao who followed me all the way, he asked loudly. It's shame to say that I'm hiding my head and showing my tail. It's me, Aosiji replied. I was sitting idle in Kijing, and saw the 4 of you walking quickly across the bridge. You were wearing casual clothes but carrying swords and knives, so I was curious. Mr. Hong is a famous figure in Zijing, so I want to see who has offended you this time. He smiled bitterly and asked suddenly. I guess you four are going to Wunshi Alley in Daokeo Street. No one answered, but Aoshiji still got the answer. I wanted to watch other people's excitement, but I didn't expect to become someone else's excitement, he sighed. Can you four wait for half an hour, please make way. Hong Fan's voice was heavy and his speed was very fast. Young Master Liu can't get you to give me face, so I can't either, Aoshiji nodded helplessly. But today's matter is so relevant that I have to take the risk. To be honest, Ao has always admired Master Hong's talent, and I thought that our fight should be 1 or 2 years later. I didn't expect it to be brought forward to today. It's a lot less fun. His words were full of regret. Hong Fan ignored him. When the Imperial Guards are doing things, I advise you to think clearly. He glanced at the streets that were blocked by traffic, and his voice was completely cold. It couldn't be clearer. Aoshiji glanced at the 4 people. In public, Ao forced the 4 of you to fight, which is certainly wrong, but I don't think it will be on the evil list. At this point, there is no way to end it peacefully. Hong Fan made a gesture. The remaining 3 people dispersed and surrounded them. The 2 sides were about to fight. The people of Zijing were obviously very accustomed to this situation. They expanded outwards skillfully, leaving thousands of square meters of space at the intersection. The front row squatted, the middle row crouched, the back row stood on tiptoe. The crowd went out. And many people hurriedly squeezed to the second floor of the street, just to seek a good view by the window. Aoshiji was surrounded by 4 people, but his expression was still relaxed. Let's discuss it. It doesn't take half an hour, just a quarter of an hour, he persuaded for the last time. The dragon blocked the road, and you guys retreated a little. I believe it won't be difficult to explain. In response to him, the swords were unsheathed, and the sand wind rolled back and scattered. Aoshiji stopped talking, his face was completely calm. The true energy was diffused. Nothing seemed to have changed in the center of the street. But the onlookers all felt that the north wind was colder and more difficult to breathe. In charge of the sand world, Hong Fan saw it more clearly. The water vapor in the sky gathered here, and the humidity was saturated in an instant. At the same time, his ability to control sand was also suppressed, and he lost the accurate perception of the sand and gravel outside. It is recorded in the Xianjiao list that the father and son of the Ao family practiced the water solution classic. It seems to be an unknown martial art. But at this moment, Hong Fan could confirm that the level of water solution code was very high, even far higher than the upper limits of cloud drop ice condensation code and God travel code, which were the middle and high levels of Yuanzi respectively. In front of Aoshiji, a translucent water film condensed. 4. Please teach me. As soon as the voice fell, he flicked his finger. Ripples spread out in circles and exploded outward. Water is the softest thing in the world. At this moment, it was mixed with innate spiritual energy, and its nature changed. It flew at high speed like steel. Hong Fan raised a sand shield, blocked the attack, and pushed it outward to 5 meters away, and then it collapsed and could not continue. In the other 3 directions, the 3 T-Riders showed their magical powers. Baijiasi lowered his center of gravity, and his limbs touched the ground like a beast running, and evaded nimbly. Zhan Yuanzi thrust his sword straight, split the water droplets in 2 with the tip of the sword, and twisted his wrist to crush them. Wu Ruai was the most direct. The freezing air condensed the water into ice, and it was smashed on the chest at will. But the fastest among the 5 was Aoshiji. He was always confident, but not conceited. He knew very well that the combined combat power of the 4 Tiki was stronger than his. To defeat the strong with the weak, one must rely on the strong to bully the weak many times. In the art of war, it is said to defeat each one separately. The first target was Baijiasi, who was the farthest from Hong Fan. The 10-meter distance passed in a flash. Baijiasi remained calm in the face of the enemy and slashed with his sword. Aoshiji formed seals with both hands. The atmosphere suddenly changed. The water vapor condensed and suddenly liquefied in the air, pouring into Baijiasi's nasal cavity. This was not just suffocation. The water entering the lungs, trachea and bronchi was extremely irritating to the human body. In addition to hindering breathing, it also triggered stress reactions such as vomiting and coughing. It was like water torture in another world. Baijiasi's sword tendons were scattered in an instant, and he pressed forward only by willpower. The sword was blocked by his knuckles. At the intersection, Aoshiji hit his opponent's neck with a horizontal palm. The meridians and arteries were cut at the same time. Baijia's eyes went black, his body slumped and rolled out. It took only one breath from the start of the battle to the first person falling. Without verbal communication, the encirclement of the tiki changed accordingly. Zhan Yuanzi turned to the left line, and Wu Ruai went to the right, and they were all more dignified. Baijia's fall at least conveyed a piece of information. Close combat with Aoshiji requires holding your breath. In the center of the battlefield, Hong Fan's sand armor took shape and took a half step forward. 15 meters apart, he and Aoshiji made eye contact. Thunder is imminent. The instant step is about to be launched, but it is suddenly stopped. This is because the street corner is suddenly shrouded in fog. Hong Fan suppressed his restlessness and dared not move. The instant step has the explosive power of the innate high stage, and its power is comparable to the killing move of the heaven-human sympathetic warrior. But Hong Fan is limited by his cultivation, and he does not have the corresponding control and nerve reflex. Every time he makes a move, he presets the process, where to cut, how to cut, and then executes it by inertia. It is quite similar to the skills released by clicking in the game in the previous life, and the moves cannot be changed. Once the field of vision is limited, the flash step may not only hurt teammates, but also easily hurt oneself. In the mist, a voice came. Mr. Hong, what Ao said before was not empty talk. I don't think much of the martial arts of my peers in Zijing, only your killing method is amazing and brilliant. Ao sighs that he is not as good as you. The source of the voice was erratic, hollow and distorted. The sand wind swirled and spread again, scattered in the mist. Hong Fan used all his strength to drive the power of the star, but still could not tell the opponent's position. In the past, relying on the sand flow, perception was his advantage. It was the first time that he was suppressed to this extent. Chapter 267 Kill the Dragon. The sand wind was heavily involved in the mist, and then it lost control and contact. But Hong Fan continued to try. Because the erosion of sand and water is mutual. He and Aoshiji seemed to have not fought yet, but in fact, they had been consuming each other since the beginning. Zhan Yuanzi was trapped in the mist and also lost his vision. According to common sense, as the weakest of the three, he would be the next target. The rapier was held horizontally. While thinking, there was a sound of heavy rain behind his head, and Zhan Yuanzi turned around and hid out. The mist rolled, dispersed and gathered again, and it was unknown whether it hit. On the other side, Wu Ruai was inevitably impatient. Baijia's was defeated without any results. If Zhan Yuanzi gave up again, it would almost be declared a mission failure. After all, the opponent was a dragon turning over the river. Fortunately, the cloud drop ice condensation classic she practiced was also a water-based exercise. The true energy flowed at a high speed. The cold air spread through the body and froze the mist. The huge temperature difference gave kinetic energy to the static atmosphere, creating an upward whirlwind. Wu Ruai moved quickly, her body wrapped in ice shavings, leaving a blue wake. The view is slightly clearer. Aoshiji's figure approached at high speed from behind the fog. Several water darts were fired first. Wu Ruai pointed her toes diagonally, stepped on the cloud drop step, and spiraled horizontally. The frosty white tip of her finger condensed in an instant. She stretched her arms and slashed sideways. Aoshiji met her with a straight punch. The ice exploded, and crystal flowers bloomed. The two passed each other. This kind of close combat is exactly what the cloud drop ice condensation classic is best at. Wu Ruai spun in the air, and her true energy gushed out. Within a radius of several meters, water vapor instantly condensed into ice clouds, and then rolled back to her feet and turned into footsteps. She bent her legs and exerted force. But it didn't feel as solid as usual. The cloud drop step was disintegrated. Wu Ruai's mind flashed. Ice comes from water, how difficult is it to dissolve it? The voice just hit her ears. The figure was already in front of him. A finger popped out and touched Wu Ruai's forehead. Her eyes were empty and she fell to the ground. Zhan Yuanzi, who was quietly approaching under the cover of frost, was revealed. The tip of the sword pointed directly at the iron with ice patterns. The combat power of Heavenly Heart Induction chapter is average, but the effect is mysterious. Zhan Yuanzi knew inexplicably that the battlefield was here. A sword hit, bringing out blood. Aoshiji's right shoulder was pierced. The mist dissipated. Only two people were left standing at the intersection of Daokeo Street. This sword is famous, Aoshiji said to Zhan Yuanzi, who was bleeding from the corner of his mouth and unable to stand up again. But if it weren't for the continuous confrontation with the sand world, you would definitely not be able to stab me. He pulled out a narrow and sharp rapier with his backhand and held it in his left hand. Aoshiji turned to Hong Fan again. Please rest assured, Master Hong, it's just a competition. Ao knows how to handle it. Seeing Hong Fan's solemn expression, he laughed easily. The redundant people have been eliminated, only you and I are left. Aoshiji danced with his sword and looked straight at him. I only have 30% of my right arm left, and my innate spiritual energy will soon be used up. In this one-on-one battle, should it be considered taking advantage of Master Hong? He asked, seemingly sincere. However, Hong Fan felt sick when he saw the behavior of this martial arts genius. I don't know what you mean, he threw down 4 words. Behind Aoshiji, several streams of sand rose from the ground and quietly surrounded the back of his head. Unfortunately, when they got 1 foot closer, they were soaked by water vapor and unable to release. This killing method is called sand ephemeris, right? Aoshiji asked with a smile without turning his head. Hong Fan opened his hand and used the fire cloud palm again. The flames pressed down and hit the water shield, evaporating a large piece of white mist. The sound of footsteps came quickly from afar. A silver light pierced through the mist and pointed directly at his face, but was clamped by Hong Fan's backhand. The mist suddenly disappeared and gathered on the sword body that was difficult to move forward. On the tip of the sword, the sharp blade formed by water extended forward, and suddenly expanded 10 inches in a blink of an eye, piercing into the corresponding thickened helmet visor. What a desert sand armor, Aoshiji praised. Hong Fan ignored him. He pushed aside the long sword, stepped forward and swung his palm down, hitting Aoshiji's forearm, instantly boiling the water layer attached to it. This move must be burning sand? You used it in the battle with Tongguangguang Zion. Aoshiji's mouth curled up. It seems that you really know me, Hong Fan said, stepping forward to Shenglong, and punching the opponent's jaw and hitting the air. Of course, Aoshiji laughed. There is also the first grade killing law sand wing, and the second grade killing law sand flowing knife. He backhanded a sword and penetrated the side ribs of the sand giant. The water vapor penetrated and peeled off a large piece of sand armor. Ever since you led the team to arrest Wang Mingke, you have been under the eyes and ears of our gang. Aoshiji lowered his voice. He thrust his sword downwards and chopped it into the sand armor on his right arm. But he kept talking. The Yao River is raging, and the water is crossing endlessly year after year. The sword's edge deepened, and his voice became louder. Hong Fan, you only have 1 sail. How can a small sampan fight against a dragon? The shouts were like a tide, sweeping through the crowd. The sand giant's left fist hooked flat and smashed into the floating water shield. The fist armor was instantly melted by a small part. That makes sense. Hong Fan looked down from above, lowered his head and looked at Aoshiji. The stalemate was short. It was immediately interrupted by a sudden thunder. More than a dozen sand shotgun shells crossed a distance of 3 feet at an initial speed of nearly 300 meters per second and bit into the flesh. Aoshiji was shocked, and his wild expression froze. He staggered back half a step and saw that his lower abdomen was like a shower, spurting out more than a dozen small blood columns. The water-relieving key flowed at a high speed, and soon the bleeding stopped. The crossroads were filled with noise again. Everyone knew that the battle had come to an end. The shotgun softened and slowly flowed out of the wound in the form of sand. Aoshiji knew that his opponent had spared his life. What kind of killing method is this? He asked in a low voice with heavy breathing. It doesn't have a name yet. Maybe it will be called sand shotgun or something like that, Hong Fan replied, dispersing the desert sand armor. Mr. Ao knows all my killing methods well, and I had to create a new one on the spot when I was at a loss. The voice reached everyone's ears. The field was suddenly quiet. Aoshiji was shocked, but he was stunned. Mr. Ao said before that there are not many martial arts in Zijing that you can appreciate. Hong Fan laughed out loud. I admire the brilliance of the water solution code, but is it possible that in the eyes of people who really have some talent, apart from the martial arts left by the predecessors, Brother Ao actually has no talent? Aoshiji's face flushed red when he heard this, and his lips trembled for a long time, but he couldn't speak. The atmosphere in the field was dull and anxious. The first laughter came from Zhang Yuanzi, who was sitting on the ground. He laughed wildly and clapped the ground, and soon turned to coughing because of poor breathing. With him taking the lead, the onlookers could no longer hold back, and the laughter roared to the sky. Under such overwhelming laughter, Aoshiji finally couldn't stand it, and fell to the ground and fainted. It was unknown whether he was really pretending. Hong Fan pulled Zhan Yuanzi up and used his true energy to stabilize his injuries, and then resuscitated his teammates one by one. What should we do with this guy? Zhan Yuanzi picked up the rapier from Aos Hiji and asked. Of course, take him with you, Hong Fan replied. What do you mean by a genius? He is lawless. Take him back and put him in jail for a few days. As he spoke, he grabbed Aos Hiji by the back of his neck and lifted him up like a chicken. The crowd made way for them and watched the four people go away, turning into the Wunshi lane. At the intersection, people resumed their movement, but the discussion continued for a long time. The people of Zijing were well informed, and it was not uncommon for the geniuses on the list to win or lose. But in all these years, this was the first time that he fainted from anger. Chapter 268 Dragon and Snake Transformation. 5 days later. December 11th. At dawn, the jade dragons fought fiercely, and their scales fell all over the sky, from Wanyan Liang's Nian Nujiao. It was afternoon when the snow stopped. Heng Wei walked out of the corridor, nodded to the governor's guards, walked through the courtyard and opened the study door. The warm air hid him. Close the door, and the cold winter is locked out. The clicking sound of machinery came from the side. Heng Wei glanced at the sound. A brand new jade inlaid pendulum clock sat on the high table, replacing the old lotus water clock. According to the craftsman who supervised the work, the long pendulum went back and forth for 1 week, which is 7,200 hours, or 1 second. Seconds are the grains. Grains grow at the spring equinox, and the sundial can be measured at the summer solstice. There are seconds in the grain, and seconds are determined at the autumnal equinox. Heng Wei knew that time was like an arrow, and he had no control over it when the pendulum sounded. Governor, he paused slightly, turned to the side room to greet him, and pulled out a chair to sit down. There was an open letter on the table. Jin Ziming sat behind the table. What's the matter? He asked without raising his eyelids while reading another gilded letter in his hand. I just came back from the Zhangwu Academy, Heng Wei said. Did you meet Wang Jinglong? Jin Ziming took over the conversation, doing two things at once. Yes, he refused to confess before, Heng Wei replied. But maybe he saw the seriously injured Aos Hiji being taken to the prison a few days ago, so he softened his tone this time. Jin Ziming nodded. These people in the martial arts world are all about hard work, not soft work. If there's Hangwu Academy, he said half a sentence again, stopped talking, and signaled his subordinates to continue. Wang Jinglong is still unwilling to testify directly. Humph, in the words of that guy, the family still has to live the rest of their lives, Heng Wei sneered. But if we have enough physical evidence, he is willing to cooperate as a witness. Jin Ziming breathed a sigh of relief. That's enough. The things in those account books are too much to check even if 1 out of 100 is too much. He put down the memorial he had read. Heng Wei asked, Zhente, was it sent from Shenjing? Yes, Jin Ziming replied. This is the emperor's letter, mainly reprimanding and urging, and the tone is more severe than before. This secret letter was sent by His Highness. He pointed to the first letter again. This His Highness was obviously the third prince. It says that Shenjing is in a state of uproar, and memorials are flying in from Zijing like snowflakes every day. 9 out of 10 are impeaching me. It says that we are disturbing the local area, using cruel officials, and causing all industries to decline. In short, the people of Zijing are terrified when they hear the name of the governor, and they dare not sail on the Yao River. Jin Ziming laughed as he said this. It can only be said that it is not unexpected. Heng Wei sneered at this. They can only use such old tricks. There is nothing new. New and old are not important. The key is whether it works. Jin Ziming shook his head. According to your highness, if there is no decisive result, I can only stay in this position until the beginning of next spring at most. The matter of returning the embezzlement to the public is of great concern to the whole world. As the governor, I am sitting on a firework tube. All the provinces and regions are waiting to see the show. He leaned back in his chair, hunched his shoulders, like an ordinary old man on the street. Across the table, Heng Wei's back was straight. According to the survey, the proportion of embezzlement in Liang's Hao is as high as 30%, if it is cleared in one fell swoop. Even if the silver for maintaining integrity to be returned is included, it will be enough to save 25%. This is equivalent to increasing the tax revenue of the court by 2 million taels every year. Such a great feat is not easy to achieve. His breathing became heavy. But with the weight of the governor, not to mention the firework tube, even the flaming mountain can be suppressed. His voice was firm. Jin Ziming glanced at him and laughed tremblingly. I only weigh 120 kilograms, skin and bones. Where does my weight come from? He pointed at the protruding cheekbone with his bony fingers and joked. Although the governor is thin, his heart is as hard as stone and his bones are as strong as iron, Heng Wei replied seriously. To clarify the world, the governor must be here, and his highness must be here. After the 12 words were finished, the pendulum clock rang, telling the time on the hour. The sound of the clock faded away, and the room was quiet for a while. Just as the two were in a daze, there was a knock on the door outside the study. Knock, knock, knock. Jin Ziming's empty eyes suddenly focused, and he exerted force on his waist and back to fill his entire skeleton. Come in. The one who entered the house with a biting cold wind was the director of the boat and ship department. The sunken ship in Niuai Inbo has been salvaged. He should have reported good news. But his face was clearly heavy. Explain clearly, Jin Ziming said in a deep voice. The things in the ship are different from what I thought before, the director replied with a forced smile. Is there a part missing? Heng Wei raised his eyebrows and asked. The private salt will naturally melt when it comes into contact with water, Heng Xiubu. The cargo hold is full. Xiao Zhang's smile became even more bleak. It's just that there is no iron armor, it's all linen. Heng Wei swallowed his saliva and unconsciously looked at Jin Ziming. The latter did not change his expression and glanced at Xiao Zhang. Then this case is much less important. Linen is cheap cloth, and it can't owe too much tax. He reached out to take the stone pot, smiled and poured 2 cups of tea, and pushed them to the two people. Taipei, it's more than that, Xiao Zhang gritted his teeth. As soon as the ship landed, someone from Fubahan came to the office to deliver a tax certificate. This batch of goods was actually taxed. Hearing this, Heng Wei's forehead was sweating. How could the tax be paid? If the goods were fine, why did Wang Jinglong fight with a tiki? He almost jumped up and asked 2 rhetorical questions in a fierce tone. Xiao Zhang stammered and did not answer. Heng Wei didn't really need an answer from anyone. He went to hold the table, but his hand accidentally pressed on nothing and he fell back into his chair. The silence lasted only a short time. I already know about this. Thank you for your hard work, Jin Ziming said to Xiao Zhang in a calm tone. Add another 50% to the rights for Quan Songjin. If he wants to leave in the next 2 days, please apologize for me. I'm afraid I won't have time to see him off. The latter took the order and left, walking in a hurry, even forgetting to close the door. The ice flowed through the house, easily covering the stove. Only the clicking sound of the pendulum continued, like a war drum. Jin Ziming and Heng Wei stood up at the same time and went out one after the other. No one said where to go, just walked. The wind was strong outside. The flying clouds and dragons changed. After passing 2 courtyards, Jin Ziming pushed open the door and entered the side room. There were 4 or 5 tables and 7 or 8 people in the room, with books, papers and pens in a mess. The room was warm. It seemed that everyone had work to do, but the atmosphere was cold. Su Jingsha, the chief historian of the Makuichi, was sitting on the inside. He was startled when he heard the door being pushed open. Seeing that it was his benefactor coming in, he quickly stood up and greeted him. Have you checked the accounts? Jin Ziming ignored the etiquette and asked. The other party opened his mouth when he heard this, but didn't know how to reply. Hasn't all the entries been washed out yet? Heng Wei asked angrily. Didn't you say that Fu Boxing's accounting skills are not good? P.S. After 2 weeks, my condition has basically recovered and I started working again today. Last Friday was the day when I was in the worst mood, and then I got better day by day. It's interesting to say that since I took leave and cleared my mind, my gastrointestinal and sleeping problems seem to have all been cured on the 2nd day. Digestion is smooth, and I can easily fall asleep on time without taking medicine. Then 3 days later, I couldn't help but start to think about the outline and details. My biological clock immediately disappeared, and I started to fall asleep at 6 or 7 in the morning. So far, it can be seen that there is nothing to worry about in the world, and mediocre people worry about it themselves. I can't make much money from writing, and I suffer mentally and physically, but no matter how my family persuades me, I am still determined to write. This is probably just a hobby. I am not good at it, but I love it. I'm sorry to make you laugh, haha. I still don't have any drafts saved, and I plan to write as much as I can every day. I take sleeping pills when I need to. PS is added later. Chapter 269, Monitoring on Behalf of the Heaven. Su Chengshi was about to reply, but was stopped by his benefactor. The three of them went to the quiet room next door. The accounts have been washed out, and every item is clear and complete. It should be correct, he explained. But these items don't match each other. What does this don't match mean? Jin Ziming asked. Taisen, Fubo's accounts are recorded in jargon. Su Chengshi calmed down and took out a copy he brought with him. Look at this sentence. Is written as, is written as, is written as, and 1 to 9 are also replaced. The same is true for the items. Smuggling salt is, smuggling people is, after every word is washed out. This one says on April 2nd this year, Fubo and the Liang family partnered to smuggle 2 ships of grain from Hongdao City in Shenzhou, totaling 380,000 caddies, at a price of 300 coins per stone, he explained in detail. Isn't this very clear? So what's wrong? Heng Wei frowned. Master Heng, every item in those account books is correct, but they don't match each other, Su Jingsha said with a wry smile. For example, this batch of herb agent from the south, the goods were shipped out of the Fubo warehouse 1 day earlier than they were received, and this item can't be found in the account of the general income and expenditure. That's why I asked the people to wash it a second time. He looked at Jin Ziming with a pale face. Taipei, I'm afraid these books are all made up. His voice was very low, and every word was trembling. But it was enough for the three of them to hear clearly. Heng Wei raised the corners of his mouth, as if he was going to force a smile, but suddenly he felt that the world was spinning and he was about to fall down. Then, he was supported by a palm. The 5 fingers were like iron, and they clenched him so hard that it hurt. Taipei, when the blood fell from the top of his head to his legs and feet, Heng Wei called out in shame. Jin Ziming withdrew his hand. I know about this, wash the account again. No matter what the result is, it's none of your business. Just report to me, he said to the chief secretary. His voice was as cold as a winter stream and as steady as a rock. Su Jingsha heard this, and it was as if he stepped back from the clouds to the earth, and his face became more red. He bowed and ran back to the next door. The two went out. The north wind blew through the courtyard, blowing the clothes. You have worked hard for many days and your heart is exhausted. Go back and have a sleep first, Jin Ziming said to Heng Wei. At this time, Heng Wei said hurriedly, but was interrupted. Don't panic, a mere storm can't blow my 120 pounds, Jin Ziming smiled. Heng Wei was stunned for a moment, nodded randomly, and walked away quickly. There was only one person left in the yard. After a long while, until the sound of the wind in his ears replaced the sound of his heartbeat, Jin Ziming moved back to his room. The charcoal stove was still burning, but the room was cold. He closed the doors and windows, and fell back into the armchair, almost fainting. He closed his eyes and took long breaths again and again. It was not until half a quarter of an hour later that Jin Ziming opened his eyes. He checked the doors and windows again, and then took out an iron plate from a hollowed-out book at the bottom of the cabinet. The plate was completely black, with a badge of 3 overlapping eyes on the front, and 4 large characters on the back, supervising on behalf of the heaven. The iron plate was as cold as an ice sculpture. Jin Ziming held it tightly, feeling the chill penetrate through his skin and flesh, all the way into his metacarpal bones. He had to get out of this net. The price was to fall into another one, December 24th, the 28th year of Zen. The sunset hung in the corner of Zijing City. The water of Yao River was dyed with mist and waves, reflecting a few returning crows. The wind crossed the river, swept over the eaves of the building, and blew the snow like sand. 1 floor below was the best suite in Kixiaju. 12 people were sitting on the huge wooden table, and toasts were clinking. Ao Fui, the leader of the Fubo gang, dressed in a green martial arts uniform, was accepting congratulations from everyone. Today's banquet was held to celebrate Ao Hickson's engagement, and he was the host on paper. Of course, even so, Ao Fui was only the third from the left, far from the top. After a few rounds of greetings, all the wine glasses on the table were empty. There was no waiter in the room. Ao Hickson, who was waiting on the side, took the wine pot from the stove and filled them one by one. At the second seat on the right, a 50-year-old man with round eyes and tiger beard nodded in thanks. This man was Jiang Danhu, the head of the Jiang family, who was in the Yuanxi realm and was honored as shocking 100 miles. He took back the wine glass and looked at the people at the bottom of the table. Nephew Ao, I heard that you were injured in the abdomen by Hongfan. How is your injury? Thank you for your concern, uncle. It's much better now, Ao Hiji replied with a calm face. As he spoke, Ao's Hickson filled his brother's glass and moved to the side of Su Pifeng, who was sitting next to him. The wine poured out like a pillar. The two looked at each other, and the latter's face tightened slightly. I heard that you had the upper hand, but this person invented a new killing method when fighting, and turned defeat into victory, Jiang Danhu asked, with great interest. That's true, Ao's Hiji nodded calmly, as if it was not him who had just suffered a defeat and whose reputation was greatly damaged. That move sans shotgun was launched without reason, and it was extremely mature. I don't believe he invented it on the spot, but no matter what, Hong Fan is only a complete 5-channel cultivation, and his skills are enough to fight against ordinary heaven and man. His martial arts skills can be said to be amazing. The words were sincere. When the people in the room heard it, they all showed approval. This person's talent is not only martial arts, another voice said, coming from a middle-aged scholar sitting high on the upper left, wearing a white robe and a white belt. As far as I know, Su Guinian often praises him, and Zhuang Liren treats him as a guest of honor. In the past 2 months, he has also cooperated with a weapons supervisor to set up a business to tinker with firearms, and the investment is not small. Everyone's eyes gathered together. You must know that the person who just spoke was Liu Xiu, the governor of Liangzhou and the head of the Liu family. There are not many young people in Zhejiang City whose names he can remember. It's rare that this Hong Chang pays so much attention to him. Is he interested in talents? A man in his 40s with a solemn appearance in brocade robe smiled at the upper right. I remember that this Hong Chang's second daughter is only 28 years old and has not yet married. It's just right to catch a rich husband. The person who joked was named Shen Guoying. Brother Shen, why are you teasing? Liu Xiu replied with a frown, but he didn't get angry. Your daughter is 2 years older than my daughter, Shen Guoying sighed when he heard this. The dog daughter is lawless. How can my words as a father work? He shook his head and drank. Liu Xiu drank a glass with him and changed the subject. In fact, if Hong Fan is willing to marry into the family, why should I be reluctant to give up a mere daughter? Everyone was secretly shocked. Only Ao's Hickson, who was hiding at the side, looked unnatural. Then I'm afraid that Hong Chang's wish will not come true. Ao Fu took over the conversation. In my humble opinion, Hong Fan is humble on the outside but arrogant on the inside, and it's not easy to make him yield. Besides, if this man hadn't died young, he would have been on the 3rd list. A genius becoming a son-in-law would attract the attention of the world. He glanced at his daughter as he spoke, as if urging her to refill her glass. Mr. Ao's opinion is mature, Liu Xiu nodded. Hong Fan is not even an adult yet, but his name is known to all the wise men present here. There is no need to say more about him and his talent, but the Hong family of Jinhe is a humble family, and it is absolutely impossible for him to marry my Liu family's daughter. As soon as the words came out, Shen Guoying, Jiang Danhu, and the old man of the Bai family, who was second from the left, all nodded heavily. Chapter 270 Golden Lock. At the banquet, the topic naturally expanded to the issue of recruiting a son-in-law. Not only the Liu and Shen families, but all the big families in Zhejiang have daughters of marriageable age. Mr. Bai mentioned that Cao Yuang went north to Huzhou to fight against Zhu Ling. The head of the Liang family talked about Gu Yixin stationed in Huaiyang State to promote the common people. Then, Jiang Danhu changed the subject and casually asked how much betrothal gifts Ao Fu received. It was Ao's Hickson herself who answered. 2 boxes of silk, 2 fine horses, a pair of jade discs, and 10 servants, she said in a gentle voice, quite shabby by the standards of the Dahua family. When the wedding day comes, the dowry will be doubled, Ao's Hickson added. Su Pifeng bowed his head slightly and raised his glass to cover his face. Jiang Danhu laughed at this. In ancient times, the kings and princes did not set a limit of fine horses and jade discs when they accepted the betrothal gifts, which shows that they were sincere. He raised his glass to Su Pifeng. Ao's Hickson's smile suddenly froze. After several rounds of drinking, everyone gradually stopped drinking. The atmosphere was a little cold. It was time to talk about business. Ao Fu immediately glanced at his daughter. Ao's Hickson naturally understood what his father meant. Dear elders, please enjoy your meal. Hickson will take her leave first. She stood in front of the table and bowed, saying respectfully. Well, go ahead. Ao Fu's reply was brief. A slender hand was placed on Su Pifeng's shoulder. He hesitated for a moment, and finally stood up. Junior will take Hickson back. Su Pifeng bowed. He was about to turn around when he heard Liu Xiu speak. I have always heard that you two are inseparable, but since the gift has been accepted, the two of you are no longer together day and night. We will talk about business later, you can stay and listen. Liu Xiu was the person with the highest status at the table, and since he had spoken, there was no room for the junior to refuse. Su Pifang bowed and said yes, and returned to his seat. He glanced back and saw Aos Hickson's back as he turned around the screen at the entrance. The room was closed, and the topic immediately became serious. Heng Wei was invited to Miyamen for questioning today, and he was no longer as arrogant as before. The first person to speak was the governor of Liangzhou. Fu Boxing's petition about the disturbance of the board office and all the necessary materials have been prepared. Then it was Ao Fui. My ancestor plans to invite Su Guinian to have a drink before the new year, and has also sent invitations to the two people from Xiangpeng Mountain. The voice gradually became lower and the meaning became deeper. There was nothing else that Su Pifang could talk about. He sat silently at the bottom, listening to the decisions of Liangzhou affairs during the banquet. It seemed that he saw the smoke of Yao River and the sunset of Zijing. After half an hour, the atmosphere became relaxed again. Everyone called the maids and served new wine. At this time, Zhang Danhu suddenly spoke. My family has recently acquired a new business, with a capital of 40,000 strings of cash, and 100 shares. I took 40 shares, which is a bit difficult. I am willing to give up half, he said and looked down. If there is a surplus in my nephew Su's family, how about playing together? Su Pifang was stunned for a moment. As a concubine, he had never been able to intervene in the affairs of the Su family, and personal affairs, from daily clothing to social interactions, have all been decided by Aos Hickson in recent years. It feels so distant and unfamiliar to make decisions without the latter. But when the table was quiet, when he caught the gaze of shocked 100 miles away Jiang Danhu, a force suddenly surged in his body, making him realize the meaning of the other party's move and react. Thank you for your support, uncle, Su Pifang replied, standing up to toast. Jiang Danhu accepted it with a smile. Not long after, everyone left the table. Accompanied by Ao Fui and two younger generations, the heads of each family left one after another. The last carriage to stop downstairs was the Fubo gang's carriage. I just asked the steward, and he said that Xiaoyer had left a long time ago. He is really ignorant, Ao Seiji complained to his brother-in-law. You don't have to wait for her, just go by yourself. He left a sentence, walked down the stone platform, and got into the car with his father and left. Su Pifang was left alone on the white jade steps. The moonlight was shining, and the goose feather snow fell all over the sky. As far as the eye could see, the world seemed to be made of jade, frozen in time. The white night was extremely quiet, and the wind was silent. Where should I go? Su Pifang had an idea, and then his heart was empty for a long time. After standing there in a daze for a moment, he walked into Wangjiang Lane and turned west at the entrance of the lane. There, Aos Hickson had a private courtyard. He walked 2 more streets. When the snow-covered tiles of the courtyard, which were filled with moonlight, came into view from afar, Su Pifang finally stopped. The Su family mansion is in the south of Zijing City. Walking slowly on the snow, it took about half an hour. The doorman was woken up in the middle of the night and was originally dissatisfied, but when he saw the appearance of the visitor on a snowy night, he dared not be lazy. The room was simply furnished, but spotless. Su Pifang sat on the bed, took off his shirt, and exuded a strong smell of alcohol. The personal maid held a hot towel and wiped his body. Yanran, when I was not here, did you clean this room every day? Su Pifang asked. And changed the mattress. He pressed the bed. The last time the young master stayed at home, the autumn heat had not yet passed. How could he use the same mattress as the 12th lunar month? The maid Yanran chuckled. Daily cleaning is my duty, not worth the young master's mention, but if the household items are not used frequently, they will get old quickly. Su Pifang didn't know how to answer, so he just nodded. Since the end of last spring, he rarely went home, either living with Aos Hickson in the Fubo gang's mansion, or staying overnight in the small courtyard in the west of the city. As a result, this beautiful maid who was given by the clan after she got the giant spirit appearance was not familiar with him. Yanran soaked the cold towel back into the basin to wash. A touch of golden light appeared between the collar, reflecting the candlelight. This is a small gold necklace. Where did you get it from? Su Pifang reached out and placed the chain on his fingertips and rubbed it. The eldest lady gave it to me, Yanran replied. It was after the young master was on the Xianjiao list. The eldest lady said that if I wear this chain, I will have a settled fate and will be the young master's. Her cheeks flushed as she spoke. Su Pifang did not reply. He withdrew his hand and pressed the golden chain around his neck. 20 months ago, the spring flowers of the 27th year had not yet fallen. He had just entered the realm of perfection and publicly fought and killed the young leader of the Red Hand Gang, and officially got the elegant name of the Red-Faced God. That night, with 7 knife wounds, he entered Aos Hickson's boudoir for the first time. The copper basin was filled with clear water, and the white silk was soaked to wipe off the half-dried blood on the hair. He knelt in front of the bed with his upper body naked. Then, Aos Hickson leaned over and put the golden chain on him. The light was brilliant, and the smile danced lightly. He smelled the bloody acquiescence, and was overjoyed and trembling as he climbed onto the embroidered bed. The girl was like a poppy. He had long known her danger. That night, he also tasted her beauty. P.S. The world is like jade is a paraphrase of Zhao Buzi's Dongxin Jia. The original sentence is look at the jade-made world, the white autumn is thousands of acres. Many metaphors and personifications in my book are from Chinese and foreign poems I have read. For thousands of years. There have been countless talented people in China and abroad, and I am unlikely to be the originator of any metaphor. I remember the source of some of these rhetoric, and some of them I think are original. I specifically mention this because I recently read Zibri's modern poem Passerby, published in 2015, and there is a sentence in it: although the wind is strong, it bypasses my soul, which is particularly good. Then I remembered that I wrote a sentence in the first volume: the mountain wind blows very hard, but it bypasses his tears, which I thought was good. Obviously, my sentence came from Zibri. But I can't remember when and where I first read Passerby. The first time I realized that this happened was in the previous book. The character I wrote, Longmo, died in battle, and his last words were, "My life is like this fist, I have no regrets." I was very proud of myself at the time. Later, a reader left a message saying that it was like the last words of the character Rao in Fist of the North Star: "I have no regrets in my life." I have not read this manga. I have only heard of the name and the protagonist Kenshiro. But looking back at Slice, I am sure that the inspiration came from Rao. Maybe I heard it, or maybe I watched this episode on the TV on demand when I was a child, but I don't remember it anymore. If there is a similar situation, please mark it for me. PS is added later. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271, Night Owl. The cool towel stroked his skin again. Hiss. Su Pifang's eyes suddenly focused, as if he had woken up from a dream. In his mind, Aos Hickson's flying gauze skirt was still lingering. After thinking about it again and again, the blush became more and more vivid, as if it was the sky above the blazing pavilion, reflected in the night sky. Su Pifang's hair stood up. He felt a surge of evil fire in his chest. "Master, I'll take my leave." Yanren spread the towel flat in the basin and stood up. When she was about to turn around, Su Pifang suddenly grabbed her hand. "Tonight," he panted. "You stay and serve me." Yanren looked up in surprise, thinking she had heard it wrong. She saw Su Pifang's eyes fall on her face, burning unbearably. "Master, will it be difficult to explain to Miss Ao?" Yanren suppressed the surprise and fear in her heart and asked in a trembling voice. Su Pifang was silent as expected and lowered his eyes. The maid stopped asking and planned to pull her hand away. At this moment, her wrist suddenly tightened, and it hurt. "Master," Yanren asked half a sentence in surprise, and then she saw Su Pifang raise his hand and sent out a wisp of wind, blowing out the candle on the table. The room fell into darkness. The copper wash basin fell on the carpet with a muffled thud. The maid was pulled into a burning embrace by an irresistible force. In the bed curtain, she was like a small boat, crushed by huge waves. "She's not here. What if she's here?" The voice was suppressed and vague. It seemed that the person who was speaking was not Su Pifang, but a stranger Yanren had never met. It was late at night. The idle people had already fallen asleep. In the mansion of the Fubo Gang's headquarters on the west bank of the Yao River in the south of Zhejiang City, patrols holding lanterns were changing shifts. In the study room in the east courtyard, a musk-white candle was lit. Only Ao Fuwei was in the room, Sitting alone at the table, writing with a pen, the people in the song are gone, and there are few green peaks on the river. When the last stroke of the word Queen was written, a sudden air current blew up in the quiet room and blew out the candle. As soon as the light was gone, the room was filled with pale moonlight. The smoke on the candle rolled up, and panic spread. The door that had been opened at some point swung and creaked. Good words, a frivolous voice praised. Aofue put down his pen and looked up at the soft chair under the window. A man in casual clothes sat casually, his left boot stained with dirty snow stepped on the brocade chair, his arms resting on his knees. He had a ponytail, a young face, but of vicissitudes of life, and a purple-blue spot on his left cheek that looked like a birthmark. You haven't even seen it, how do you know whether it's good or bad? Aofue asked. With just a few dozen strokes, it can make the forehead of the dignified night owl sweat, so it must be a good word. The man smiled, white air dripping from his mouth. Night owl, Aofue repeated the two words in a long tone. Since I took the position of leader of the Fubo gang 5 years ago and received the last order from the court, I haven't heard anyone call me that again. So, who's Henfu? What are you doing here? He wiped his forehead and asked again. Not Zenfu Envoy anymore, who leaned back in his chair and brushed his boots with his fingers. Snowflakes shattered and flew up with a bang. Now it's who's Supervisor Envoy, whose supervisor raised his chin. Congratulations on your promotion, Aofue said casually and sat down on the armchair behind the slanted table. You're welcome, you're welcome. Who didn't expect the other party to be so cold, so he could only bow and laugh at himself. I'm here this time to convey the order from above. He scratched a purple birthmark on his face and turned to the main topic. What order requires a third-rank supervisor to be the messenger? Aofue asked, picking up a porcelain cup, pouring cold water from nothingness, and drinking it slowly. I want you to help Jin Ziming break the impasse, the visitor whispered. Aofue frowned. Things have calmed to this point, why didn't you say it earlier? He suddenly put down his cup and questioned in a deep voice. What did you say earlier? Supervisor Who cried out in humiliation. The Jin surname didn't ask us for help earlier. Aofue only drank water and didn't speak for a long time. Why, Night Owl, just speak directly if you have something to say. Supervisor Who straightened his back and looked behind the table. This supervisor knows that this matter involves a lot of things. Fubo has helped us run the business for many years, and now it is also the leader of the Liangzhou underworld, and an important asset of the hospital. That's why you want me to come in person. He laughed again. His laughter was cold and meaningful. Aofue looked at him until the other party stopped smiling. You worry too much, he replied. As long as it is the dean's intention, Ao will never say anything. That's really the best. The Who surnamed smiled and his body relaxed again. What does the court want me to do? Send the real account books of Fubo Bank, Aofue asked. It's not difficult. If you need it, it can be done tonight. The man surnamed Who shook his head. It's not enough, he sighed. Isn't it enough? Aofue asked back. As the governor, Jin Ziming has the power to directly reach the emperor's ears. With those accounts, half of Zijing can be taken. It was easy before, but it's too late now. Supervisor Who shook his finger. Even if Jin Ziming got the account books, he still needs to check them up and down, and then collect evidence, arrest people, and interrogate them. For such a large case, it will take at least several months to get a result from beginning to end. You don't know that you are far away from the capital. Jin Ziming can only stay in Zijing until the beginning of spring at most. Every time there is a court meeting, there will be a tax on him, and His Majesty may issue an edict to remove him from his position at any time. Aofue just sneered disdainfully when he heard this. Yixao, since the courtyard wants to help him, we must act quickly and fiercely, and beat the Liu family without any chance to fight back. Supervisor Who stood up and left his seat, muttering with his hands behind his back. Then what do you think we should do? Aofue crossed his arms. If it were you, we would have to give up the Fubo gang. The man surnamed Who glanced at him. The Fubo gang is an arm of the Liu family. It has an organization, manpower, and intelligence, which represents their direct control over the lower classes of Zijing. If the Fubo gang is destroyed, the Liu family will lose half of their eyes and hands and feet. Aofue did not speak. You won't be reluctant to give it up, will you? Supervisor Who glanced at him. Huluman, Aofue pressed his palm on the table and stood up to attack. Huluman hurriedly comforted him. Don't worry, it's just a joke. Why would Ao abandon the Fubo gang? Aofu what you did not entangle. But to say that this can suppress the Liu family of Zijing in one fell swoop, this is far from enough. The Shen family can stand with the Liu family, Huluman hurriedly nodded after hearing this. So we have to use the Fubo gang as a bargaining chip and borrow a knife, he chuckled. What do you mean? Aofu what you was puzzled for a moment. It's very simple, Huluman said complacently. Su Guinian is slippery and unwilling to join the game, so we give him a push. Don't you have a river blocking ghost under your command, and is it led by your daughter? Let them go and kill a Tiki. A single Tiki is nothing special, many of them died on the mission, but if they died in Zijing City, the matter would be different. He walked to the window with his hands behind his back, and half of his body was covered by the moonlight. At that time, the Liangzhou Martial Arts Academy will certainly respond, and even Su Guinian will not be able to stop it. When the Martial Arts Academy personally cuts off the Liu family's arm, whether Su Guinian wants to or not, he will stand on Jin Ziming's side. Huluman turned his face to the side, and the purple birthmark was dark and heavy under the moonlight. What about the Shen family? Aofu what uttered 3 words. With Shenmoi's smoothness, is there any need to say it? Huluman sneered. Aofu what you could only nod silently. Good idea, good idea. So, who do you want me to kill? He asked. How about the most famous Hong Fan? It just so happens that he injured my son. Everyone else can do it, but he can't. Huluman spoke in a hurry. Although this man has a plain background, he is quite capable. It's not just his ability to do things that Su Guinian values. You may not know that after Wang Mike was arrested, Zhuang Liren visited Liu Xiu and Jin Ziming the next day and asked them to promise not to involve Hong Fan. What's more, he is a star god. Our supervisory office never. No need to be long-winded. Just saying. Aofu what Yi interrupted him. Although I haven't been back to Shenjing for 8 years, I haven't forgotten these things. Good Ji Shui Fubo. It turns out that you are making fun of me. Huluman chuckled. Anyway, except for him, you can choose any of the rest. It shouldn't take you more than half a month to deal with the beginning and end of Zijing. If there is a need, the courtyard will also assist in arranging the retreat. He finished speaking lightly, exchanged glances with Aofu Wei, and walked out of the window. In a blink of an eye, the man disappeared. Only the vast white night remained. Aofu Wei walked to the window and faced the falling snow quietly. Soon, his hair turned gray. P.S. When I wrote this chapter, it had been a month since my depression relapsed. Reading this book again now, I feel very unfamiliar with it. I apologize to you all again. There is really nothing I can do. Chapter 272 Review. 3 days later, on December 27th. Early in the morning, the sunlight still carried the chill of the night. With a slight clang, the door of Chaori Mansion was bolted and slowly pulled open, shaking off several icicles on the eaves and poking a row of black holes in the snow. Hong Fan carried a small bag and walked to Kaminghang outside the city. Since the main business involved firearms, the location was chosen to be a house built along the Yao River with a large warehouse more than 10 miles north of the city. The courtyard was clean, but as soon as you stepped in, you would be hit by a pungent smell of saltpeter and sulfur mixed with grease. In the central hall, Jin Hong led a dozen people, half of whom were transferred from Zhanzhou. The new year is approaching. Dahua does not have such advanced things as group visits, but the bosses will give the employees some silver money. Hong Fan has always been generous in doing things, and this time is no exception. Each employee gets 2 ingots and 5 taels of silver, and those with higher ranks get twice as much. Therefore, everyone's smiles were sincere, and their New Year greetings were full of the meaning of devoting one's life to the cause. After the year-end bonus was distributed, the annual leave began. Kaminghang would not resume work until at least 20 days later. At 9 a.m., Hong Fan was escorted out of the door and returned to the city. Xianhang was managed by the He family, and he never needed to intervene. The sun in the sky had fully stretched out. There were many pedestrians in Kinglin Alley, but Chaori Mansion was rarely empty. Aunt Liu and her friends had packed up their things more than half a month ago, and under the protection of Shen Huang and others, they returned to Jinhei with Hong Pan and others. According to the date, they should have arrived. In the front hall, Hong Fan and Zhan Yuanzi sat idly. 2 newly hired servants in the local area made tea and served it. There were still 4 days before the spring festival, and there were only 4 people in the mansion. Are you really not going home for the new year? Hong Fan asked casually. It's not home for a long time. The last time I went back was 5 years ago, and we parted unhappily. Zhang Yuanzi replied casually. Then you're alone during the new year, why don't you go find Ruai? Hong Fan asked again. No need, don't we have them? Zhang Yuanzi pointed at the two people sweeping the yard. It often snows lightly in the first month of the year, and I like its lightness. I try to depict it with ink and white space, but I can't draw it. It's just right for me to put in more effort and think of a solution alone. Hong Fan nodded when he heard this. He knew that Zhang Yuanzi always said what he meant and never showed off. If there's not much going on in Jinhei, I guess there won't be much. I'll come back earlier and spend the Lantern Festival with you and Ruai. Hong Fan thought about it and suggested. That would be great, Zhang Yuanzi smiled. It's a pity that Jiaxi won't leave from Hongai until after the Lantern Festival. It will probably be at least the end of the first month when the four of us are reunited. You can't blame him for that. Hong Fan also smiled. He took Hongli back with him, and the new bride only stayed for more than half a month to meet her parents-in-law, which is already too little. At this point, the two of them had their own feelings. Since redeeming Hongli, by Jiaxi, who used to be cautious, suddenly became more assertive. In the 12th month, even without the permission of his parents or the matchmaker, he still held a wedding banquet in the small courtyard that had just been decorated, which was considered a major event in his life. At noon, the servants brought 4 dishes and a soup. Hong Fan had a simple meal, said goodbye to Zhang Yuanzi, and left with his eyes on. It was the new year, who wouldn't go home? The powered sand wing can take off regardless of the terrain, but Hong Fan has always been low-key, so he chose to walk out of the city first. The moat in the west of Zhejiang City was dug by humans and was nourished by the Yao River. If the tall city walls are iron armor, then the river is the jade belt that binds the armor. Stepping over the stone bridge over the river, the view suddenly widened. The tall mountains stretched to the west, and the snow-covered mountain tops in winter shone in the midday sun, like golden hats. Hong Fan smiled unconsciously. Having been away from his hometown for more than half a year, his life can be said to be fulfilling. Not only has his cultivation level been steadily improving, but the plates of Xian Hexing and Kamingxing have also been steadily laid out. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but be full of confidence. The city wall has been thrown far away, and it looks small in the peripheral light. So Hong Fan left the official road, confirmed the direction and slowly accelerated, leaped in one step, and took off on the dead branches. Sand ants attached to form wings. The ground fell down. At the moment of intersecting with the wind, Hong Fan vaguely heard a pedestrian calling out his name. When he looked back, everything on the official road was blurred. Hong Fan arrived in Jinhei at dusk that day. His return home is a big deal. Not only for the Hong family, but also for the whole city. Chorian was cleaned 3 times, and it was fumigated with seal incense inside and out, and even the pillars were painted with new paint. All the families in the city who have young ladies tried to inquire about the itinerary of the second young master of the Hong family in the past few days, hoping to create a few encounters to try their luck. But unfortunately, Hong Fan did not attend any public banquets or gatherings before the new year. On the 28th, he visited Zhang Zhan and Gong Shi in turn. The latter got the news and had the opportunity to move to Zhejiang in the new year. On the 29th, he went to the Hong family tombstation to pay his respects to Hong Jian and his biological mother Hong Lin. Hong Ping also got a yellow paper. When it comes to New Year's Eve, it is not a suitable day to go out. At dawn, the kitchen of the clan boiled 3 large oil pots as usual to fry New Year's goods for each family. In and outside the alley, the young boys clamored to take over the work and climbed up the wooden ladder like wild monkeys to post spring festival couplets. Only the gate of the martial arts field was closed and heavily guarded. Under the high platform, all the red-clothed cavalry lined up strictly. On the high platform, 8 chairs were lined up, belonging to the 8 high-level people in the clan who were at the level of Hunrin and above. Hong Fan's seat was tied with Hong Wu, in the middle. This was the first time that the former had been in the same line with the elders in public, and was in the center. It was somewhat strange and awkward. But today's review was specially set up for him. Hong Lai of the 3rd team, Hong Bo of the 1st team, step out. Hong Shi, who was standing at the first position on the stage, shouted loudly. He broke through to the level of the whole lineage a month ago. Because Hong Ming was going to work in the city defense department, Hong Shi temporarily took over his position and became Hong Sheng's deputy. The 2 people who came to the front of the battle took off their outer armor and tops quickly. Hong Lai took over a long stick that reached his eyebrows, while Hong Bo held a shield in one hand and a blunt knife in the other. There was no nonsense, and then there was an all-out martial arts performance. The air was distorted, and the heat flow was scattered like a tide. Hong Fan had long been familiar with the flame flow and the corresponding killing method, and did not think it was worth watching. But he soon understood the intention of the clan to make such an arrangement. Hong Lai and Hong Bo had both reached the peak of the penetration realm. Have they all completed the 12 channels? Hong Fan asked with his head tilted. That's right, Hong Wu replied. At this time, Hong Bo had the upper hand after the wrestling, and used his round shield to block the stick at his eyebrows. He grinned triumphantly, revealing his golden teeth repaired with gold foil and brass. You also know that at the end of the penetration, the effect of Tuagongwen is very small. Hong Wu leaned further to the side and lowered his voice. They are not as talented as you two brothers. In the past few years, they have been unable to make further progress and have given up the idea of making progress, until the Kailing Dan arrived half a year ago. The so-called Kailing Dan is actually Zai Sui Dan, but it was renamed to keep it secret. Chapter 273, Hongluo Formation. Uncle, can the rumor about the elixir be kept secret? Hong Fan nodded, covered his mouth with his hand, and asked again in a low voice. Absolutely no problem, Hong Wu replied firmly. Except for the few people on the stage, the rest of the clan, even Hong Shi and Hong Lai, only think that you bought the new elixir from Huzhao through the Zhuanggong's way, and we strictly forbid anyone to mention this matter, whether inside or outside the clan. He followed suit, covering his words with a teacup. That's why the martial arts of the clan's children have made rapid progress in the past 6 months. People in the city also say that the Huang family has great luck and has opened up. Hong Wu sighed as he spoke. He was probably regretting the children's past hard work that was obviously painful but meaningless. Shouts exploded from the audience. Hong Bo gained the upper hand and used a single sword to make a series of cuts, forcing Hong Lai to retreat again and again. You send back 50 Kailing pills every month, enough for more than a dozen people. Hong Wu and Hong Fan looked at each other for a moment, then smiled and spoke again. This pill is too expensive. In the past, even if the clan only allocated it to the Hunran realm, it was still stretched. It's different now. Ashing has all 8 meridians, and you have lived in Zijing for a long time, and I and your uncles are old and have reached the end of our road. Even if Ash is included in the clan consumes at most a dozen pills a month, and there is a large surplus. Therefore, I discussed with your Uncle Li and expanded the distribution range of Kailing pills to the Guantong High stage. While speaking, Hong Lai stopped his decline, turned around and used his stick to knock away Hong Bo's single sword. The offensive and defensive positions changed. In the battle with the Snake people, the Red Cavalry only lost 3 people, leaving 58 people. In the past 6 months, 6 more people in the clan have broken into the Guantong realm, making up 64 people. Hong Wu pointed at the 6 people with his hand. Except for the 2 who were Hong Fan's classmates in the clan school, the other 4 people were not young. Obviously, it was a newly revealed gem after the full resources boost. There is such a change in the clan, and everyone knows that it originated from you. Hong Wu paused and continued. So today you returned home for inspection, and the disciples were all angry. Hong Fan did not reply, but nodded silently. The fight off the field was decided at this time. Hong Lai used 3 heavy sticks to smash the round shield, and finally knocked Hong Bo to the ground. With Hong Fan taking the lead, the applause rose up and became one. The 2 picked up their weapons, stood back in the middle, and saluted to the stage. The martial arts field was silent, as if waiting. Hong Fan looked at Hong Wu. The latter signaled with his eyes. He glanced to the right again. Hong Sheng responded with a pleased gesture. Hong Fan knew that it was time for him to speak. Are you injured? He calmed down and asked the 2 people off the stage. The form was too official, and even the sound in the air was slightly distorted. My dear, it's just a bruise, nothing serious. Hong Lai clasped his hands and said solemnly. His attitude was not answer, but report. More than a year ago, Hong Sheng was the eldest son of the clan. Hong Lai was the captain. Hong Fan was a new member of the Red Cavalry. It seemed that in just a moment, the world had turned upside down. For a moment, everyone was a little dazed. However, after this round of ordinary conversation, some invisible and intangible things were established in the void, calming people's hearts. You two are now on par with each other in cultivation. I thought Hong Bo had a better chance. Hong Fan suddenly laughed. In the recent competition, Brother Bo and I were really only evenly matched. This time, I took advantage of the long weapon. Hong Lai smiled back. Hongbo curled his lips when he heard it. Winning is winning, losing is losing, this game is nothing, he said in a rough voice. My dear, wait and see, who of us will enter the state of perfection first, and then we will be the winner. There were a few cheers in the crowd. The atmosphere became harmonious and smooth again. But the review did not end there. Hong Sheng stood up, ordered the two to return to the team, and he also stepped down and put on his armor. Hong Li moved his seat and sat next to Hong Fan. What I want to show you today is actually a combined attack technique that the clan has practiced for many years, called the Honglu formation, he said with great interest. You must have been in the team for more than 3 years, have a tacit understanding with each other, and have at least 6 paths of the Guantong realm to be selected into the formation. Hong Fan nodded when he heard this. He had noticed before that all the red-clothed cavalry were dressed in armor today, and 30 of them were not wearing iron-studded leather armor, but heavy steel armor. This reminded him of Jian Xian's ridicule about the tyrants in the border areas. Off the field, 30 heavily armored soldiers carried swords and shields, each holding an iron bow, and lined up in 3 teams. You have actually seen this Honglu formation. Hong Ming, who was sitting at the edge, took over the conversation. Do you remember the night you set up a trap to capture and kill Li Heming? It was also here that I led them behind the wall at that time, intending to attack with the Honglu formation, but the master of the family was nostalgic and didn't use it in the end. Can this formation fight against the Xianshan? Hong Fan reacted and asked in surprise. To be honest, with his current actual combat power, which is about the same as the interaction between heaven and man, ordinary Guantong warriors can no longer get through a round under his hands. Crossing 2 major realms, even if 30 people are assembled, it seems that they cannot fight. The Honglu formation formed by 30 people is of course vulnerable to the eldest brother in the first battle against Qi Lin, Hong Wu explained. But against some of the first Xianshan, there is indeed a chance of winning, even if it is Li Heming, there is the ability to delay. Of course, this is just a rough statement. There are many strange martial arts in the world, and there are restraints between each other. It is not just determined by cultivation. While talking, the red-clothed riders had already deployed their formations, and Hong Sheng, who played the imaginary enemy, also changed into armor. Our Honglu formation relies on 3 kinds of equipment. Hong Li was very excited and listed them like the back of his hand. The first is the auxiliary medicine made by the clan with 2 Iguang pills and diluted Giming Wang, which can suppress pain and strengthen the mind. Although it will cause weakness for several days after taking it, it has no permanent sequelae for Guantong realm. The second is the full-body armor made of black iron by the Kui family. A set weighs 80 kilograms, and the chest armor is 1/6 of an inch thick. Ordinary people can't wear it. As for the third, you guess. Off the field, the 2 armies faced each other, with a number of 30 to 1. Hong Shi gave the order with a shout. 3 teams of 10 red-clothed cavalrymen fired in groups, firing 3 rounds of arrows per second. The iron arrows were all without arrowheads to avoid hurting people. Hong Fan quickly saw the clue. Each round of 10 arrows was deliberately spread over an area of several square meters, only to intercept, not to kill. In addition, these arrows were infused with yanligen, steaming out light blue gas. The arrows are poisoned. Are you going to create a poison cloud? Hong Fan asked. I knew I couldn't hide it from you, Hong Ming replied with a smile. It's not actually a poison. It's just a kind of anesthetic powder. It's because its effect is simple, so it works on almost all warriors. It's just affected by their cultivation. Of course, the 30 people in the formation took the antidote in advance. In just a moment, the rain of arrows covered 4 rounds. Hong Sheng was obviously declining. His cultivation level was not at the innate level, so the effect of the drug was more obvious to him. As his speed decreased, he blocked more and more times, and it became difficult to move. Chapter 274 Enlightenment. After 6 rounds of arrows, Hong Sheng was hit for the first time. The 2 sides were still 20 meters apart. From this arrow, his defeat was certain. A Sheng is not weak in the peak of the whole world, but facing the Honglu formation, this is the limit, Hong Li commented. Sure enough, in the next 3 rounds of arrow rain, Hong Sheng's movement accuracy declined and was hit again and again. He no longer tried to break through and wave his hand. The martial arts performance was interrupted. Hong Shi came over and brought the antidote. After taking it, Hong Sheng sat in meditation and circulated his ki, and after a while he recovered to his full strength. Next, let's assume that the opponent has broken the arrow formation. Hong Wu explained. In the Honglu formation, the heavy armored soldiers gave up their iron-framed bows and replaced them with heavy shields and single swords. Then, a strong stream of fire gathered from each team of 10. The air twisted and rose, and Hong Fan estimated that the temperature was about 500 to 600 degrees. 7-step cage? He asked in surprise. It can be considered a weakened version, Hong Wu smiled. The innate flame flow is the foundation of the 7-step cage. It is logical that it cannot be used below the level of heaven and man. Fortunately, the difficulty of this move lies in the waste of true energy, so it can be used by combining forces. As he spoke, Hong Sheng entered the battle. In the rolling heat flow, he fought 10 people at once and quickly entered and exited, showing the absolute combat power of the small Wu leakage realm. As for the high temperature of 500 degrees, it was naturally ineffective against Hong Sheng. You have also seen the innate combat power of snake people on the city, who are much stronger than Ah Sheng. Compared with the Guantong realm, it is like a child against an adult, Hong Wu said, watching the battle group. The 3 10-man shield formations were constantly compressing their positions, making the heat flow stronger. When facing an innate master, the biggest gap is not the power of the moves, but the speed, agility, and reaction. Hong Wu looked at the heavy armored soldiers who were knocked down one after another by Hong Sheng, and sighed softly. If you can't get past this barrier, 30-1 is just 31-1. No matter how sharp the weapon is, it can't hurt the opponent at all. That's why we have this Honglu formation. His tone was heavy and proud. The so-called Honglu means no attack, no parry. As long as the opponent gets close, he will be hurt, Hong Fan summarized. It's just that exchanging one life for one kill is really cruel. He sighed and fully understood the purpose of this formation. It's inevitable that the weak will defeat the strong. The one who took over was Firebird Mingwang Hongming. The people below were originally trained by him. When the Honglu formation is formed, life is no longer life, but becomes a consumable like arrows, true ki, true essence, etc. The difference in cultivation brings about an absolute gap in strength, speed, 5 senses, etc., which is the cruelty of martial arts. If the weak still cherish their lives, then there is no chance of winning at all. Hongming's tone was relaxed, but it revealed the iron-blooded and domineering tone. When you follow me, don't think of yourself as a human being, just a target. This is what I said to them when they were about to face Li Heming. He stroked his long beard with his fingertips. Brother Fan, you have lived in Zhejiang for a long time now, and your horizons are broad. In those luxurious places, a Guantong realm is nothing, but the Honglu formation is used to protect the master of the family at the last moment. With a large shield, iron armor, and a life at risk, even Li Heming must at least use a full-strength thunder sword, Hong Ming said on his knees, turning his head and looking deeply. Hong Fan looked at him and nodded silently. In the early 19th century in the previous life, European cavalry were equipped with a large number of breastplates to resist muskets. According to the description of French officer Jacques Winnet in military history course in 1829, the breastplates weighing 7 to 8 kilograms equipped by French cuirassiers could block rifle bullets fired 100 meters away. The armor was only installed on the front chest because this is where the heart is. The martial arts performance was coming to an end. After knocking down 17 people, Hong Sheng exhausted his true energy and surrendered. In the past 2 years, Hong Fan has been practicing diligently and has developed many killing methods. In his opinion, the Honglu formation itself is not so amazingly exquisite and ingenious. Only the intention and enlightenment behind it are moving. I have been away from home for half a year and have met many noble families. Hong Fan stood up and sighed. In terms of spirit, I think there are many who are not as good as my family, only 2 sentences. But they are sincere and come from the heart. That night, it was New Year's Eve. After the New Year's Eve dinner, Hong Fan and his brothers, including Hong Fu, watched the fireworks set off by their family. The next day was the first day of the 29th year of Zen. As usual, the ancestral hall was opened and the clan sacrifice was held. Hong Fan served as the chief priest this time. On the second day of the new year, things became more complicated. In the morning, Hong Fan first visited all the elders in the clan, and in the afternoon, he met with the children of Zhejiang Chen who came on horseback with Hong Wu and Hong Shen. Hong Chen was also there, and she had a rare smile on her face. In the evening, Hong Fan went to the banquet hosted by the new chief official of Jinhei's weapon production supervisor. With the news that once Hong Wen was promoted to supervisor, at least in the Liang's house system, Everyone knew how powerful Hong Fan was. It was not until the third day of the first lunar month, the sixth day after returning home, that he had time to meet his peers in the city. It was afternoon. The location was the Kui family compound, which was more private than Tinghai Pavilion and Jinfeng Tower. When Hong Fan arrived, more than 10 people were already there. There was only one woman in the full room. Naturally, it was Zhang Fuqiu. But compared to the past, this daughter of the city guard was completely different. She did not wear a skirt, but a martial arts uniform, tied a man's bun, and had thin calluses on her palms. Her expression was calm, except when Hong Fan entered the room, when a wave of mist rose. Mr. Hong, long time no see, she no longer casually called Hong Fan's name. It's only been half a year since we last met, how come you look so different? Hong Fan asked curiously. Not long after you left, I started practicing martial arts, Zhang Fuqiu replied. I have just opened up 2 channels. Oh? Whose school did you become? Hong Fan was surprised and asked again. The Zhang family came from Jiangnan, not a martial arts family, and Zhang Zhan only knew some health-preserving boxing that only reached the inner vision realm. So if she wanted to practice martial arts, she could only find an outside master. Sister Fuqiu is now my junior sister, Go Jingsha took the initiative to answer, with a gentle tone. Master Je personally accepted the disciple in June. Hong Fan had met Je Xianlang several times. He was the leader of the Whirlpool sect, at the realm of heaven and man, and had fought with Broken Tooth. So it was only 6 months ago, Hong Fan praised politely. It's not slow to break through from the inner vision realm to 2 regular meridians in half a year. Zhang Fuqiu was somewhat proud when she heard this. You must know that the martial arts talent of the person in front of her is recognized as the ceiling in Jinhai City. But she shook her head immediately. It's only because her family is willing to waste elixirs that they have made such progress. Miss Zhang was in such a state that Hong Fan almost didn't recognize her. In his mind, the girl who raised her chin to admonish an instructor in martial arts, and the young master Gao who recited poems to the girl, 2 figures flashed in an instant. But these reveries were immediately covered by the new greetings in the tea room. Chapter 275 Kingayan. After a few rounds of greetings, everyone sat down formally. I heard that you quietly proposed to my Uncle Wu. Hong Fan's first question was to inquire about the host's marriage. This is going to be a close marriage, he laughed. Kui Yuding proposed to the Huang family and asked to marry Hong Wu's youngest daughter. This was something Hong Fan heard as soon as he returned to Jinhai. When talking about this, the room was suddenly filled with boos. Even though the eldest son of the Kui family has always been smooth and generous, he couldn't help blushing at this time. It can't be said to be quiet, in fact, it's premeditated, he said self-deprecatingly, holding the pot to pour tea for everyone one by one. After 8 months of separation, Jinhai has a lot to say. For example, the new city defense garrison Huang has an arrogant personality and is not easy to get along with. For example, the Li family is in a very bad situation now. Most of the clan schools have been disbanded, and the blood-inducing incense produced is almost all exported, while their own children are powerless. There is another big event, which was rare in the past, Go Jingsha suddenly mentioned. The Meng family of Huai sent people to Jinhai in September, but they came here specifically to apologize. The apology was called a big event because the Meng family was much stronger and more powerful than the 3 families in Jinhai. What are they apologizing for? Hong Fan couldn't think of it. It's about the incident in Liangping town about you. The one who answered was Qi Xinchi, with a rather dull tone. Isn't this a good thing? Hong Fan was puzzled by this. The Meng family came to apologize, but they never visited my Qi family from beginning to end, but only went to your Hong family, Qi Xinchi sighed. They surrendered not because they insulted the daughter of the Qi family, but the daughter-in-law of the Hong family. As he said this, he couldn't suppress the embarrassment on his face. Hong Fan suddenly understood. It's said in the city that the Meng family heard about your reputation as a boss in Zijing, so they sent people to bow their heads, Kui Yudang added. So you also know about the things in Mingyu Tower? Hong Fan was very surprised. He didn't expect that Jinhai still had its own legends even though he was not there. Of course, Yang Yingxin, who was sitting at the end of the table, finally found an opportunity to speak. Zijing is the capital of Liangzhou. Although most of us here have never been there, since the second young master has been there, we should at least keep an eye on him. As soon as these words came out, the study room suddenly became noisy. Every anecdote of Zijing in the past 6 months, The 1-on-2 fight at the Pinho Club, the arrest of Wang Mingke at Mingayu Tower, and the duel with flipping river dragon Aos Hiji, were all mentioned by everyone. While everyone was talking about it with relish, Hong Fan, the person involved, felt a little embarrassed. After a period of noise, the hall fell into an inexplicable silence. Shen, Liu, Bai, and Zhang, these are all well-known surnames, Go Jingsha sighed. For a night of romance and the spirit of a brothel, he can spend thousands of taels of silver. After all, he is a great family and a real young master. In comparison, our Jinhei's business is just a small one, he said ashamedly. There was no word during the banquet. Everyone just nodded in agreement. Only Hong Fan shook his head and laughed. Don't underestimate yourselves, he took the teapot from Kui Yudang and filled it for everyone. The palaces and temples in Zijing are more luxurious than those in Jinhei, and the martial arts they inherit are more profound than those in Jinhei, but I can't stand your son, so I'm not as good as you. Hong Fan put down the teapot and looked at everyone. As long as Jinhei has a good wind, we can also rise to the top. This was a very high statement, and no one dared to promise. But Gao and Kui, as well as Hongfu, Yang Yingxin and others, couldn't help but feel hot on their hearts and grit their teeth and clench their fists when they heard it. Li Heming's matter was actually for the public. However, due to the core role played by Hong Fan and the Hong family in it, and the fact that the Li family has been getting worse since then, there is inevitably some tension between the Li and Hong families. Kui Yudang is hosting today, and in order to avoid trouble, no one with the surname Li was invited. After the tea, Hong Fan privately asked Li Xingfa to come to the dinner. After the banquet, Tang Dajie took out a number of beautifully packaged gifts from the carriage. The one for Kui Yudang was a precious chalcedony. The ones for Gao Jingsha were 2 marrow-cleansing pills. The one prepared for Zhang Fuqi was the top-grade fragrance of Dahua. However, when Hong Fan saw her wearing martial arts uniform and tying her hair today, he felt that this gift was inappropriate. Just as he was thinking, Zhang Fuqi came up and snatched the fragrance away. Although you practice martial arts, you are still a girl, these were her original words. The stars and the moon passed by. On the 12th day of the first lunar month, Hong Fan attended the wedding of Hong Shi and Shi Yinyu, and the whole family was in high spirits. 3 days later, it was the 15th day of the first lunar month. With the farewell of a group of friends, Hong Fan spread his sand wings outside the city and drove the golden light of the early morning all the way to the east. After 3 rests, Hong Fan arrived in Zijing. It was already afternoon. He landed outside the city at an unmanned place, and walked into the city with a small bag wrapped in silk cloth. The bag contained 3 color pigments made from snake man scales, weighing less than 2 kilograms. For a long-distance flight, every extra bit of weight would cause considerable consumption. So Hong Fan only brought this small bag of Jinhei specialties as a souvenir. Zijing City was still immersed in the atmosphere of the new year. Entering from Anding Gate in the west, Hong Fan walked straight along West Street to Xianzhen Bridge, with colorful silk ribbons tied to the doors and windows along the way. The shops on the main road were not open yet. Every household along the way had its doors open, and there were also bustling voices passing by from afar. On the 6th cross street in the east of the city, children screamed and chased each other. Hong Fan turned into King Lean Alley and finally saw the closed door of Chauri Mansion. The door hinges had just been oiled before the new year, maybe it was the wind. He thought, and went forward to push the door but couldn't push it. The door was not bolted. Hong Fan's smile faded immediately. He gently put down the bag and climbed over the courtyard wall from the side of the door. He landed silently. There was no one in the front yard, and there was a thin layer of snow on the road that had not been swept for 2 days. Hong Fan instinctively wanted to call out, but he held back. Sand rose from under his feet and spread silently forward along the ground. Hong Fan walked in slowly. The hall was quiet, with a breath of iron ice lingering in the wind. When he walked to the second entrance, he smelled blood. The smell came from the kitchen on the side. Hong Fan took a deep breath, condensed the sand flow, and put on his armor. He walked quietly to the source of the fishy smell. The kitchen door was half open. When he pushed it open, there were 2 bodies lying on the ground. They were 2 local servants. They were face down, and were hit in the back with a palm, and were killed by a blow. On the stove, the cooked wontons were frozen in the pot, probably for supper. There was a bowl of milk on the table in the corner, and there were open cans of sugar and honey next to it. Hong Fan stood silently for a moment, clenched his fists, and suppressed the dizziness that came over him. He went out and walked towards the side garden at the back. Walking along the corridor, his steps became faster and faster, until he entered the courtyard, where he slowed down. The first thing that caught his eye was the sword marks on the pillars of the pavilion by the pond. There was a wooden table under the eaves, and an unfinished ink painting of a garden scene was spread out on thick paper. In the painting, the light snow was dancing, dotted with some white pigment. On the side of the garden was a wing room facing the pond. The rear window was open inwards, and it was dark. A glance at it was like looking straight from the human world to the underworld. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.